Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z and Cory Clubb, the podcast you're looking for. This is... yes.
For an entire generation, people have experienced Star Wars the only way it's been possible, on the TV screen. But if you've only seen it this way, you haven't seen it at all.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
We've been waiting for you.
The force is strong here, even stronger than the coffee.
At last! Where have you been?
Welcome to Coffee with Kenobi. Here are your hosts, Dan Z and Cory Clubb.
Hello, this is Dan Z, and welcome to show number 40 of Coffee with Kenobi, the Star Wars podcast that analyzes our favorite saga in a whole new way. Filling in for Cory Clubb is our good friend and co-host, Jeff McGee.
Hello, everybody. Be sure to check out our coffee chat with Pablo Hidalgo as we get some new insights into the story group and talk to this Star Wars legend. Check out the latest Legends library as well as Randy and Luke discuss the new novel Kenobi. As always, I'd like to invite you to head over to marvindogmedia.com to check out some of the great podcast offerings we have for you there, including the latest episode of Bantha of Banter, featuring my interview with Chris Cape, the musical mind behind the sensational Mark Hamill Can Handle.
In today's show, Dr. Andrea Letamendi joins us as we discuss our topic for show number 40, the psychology of collecting. We also discuss the news of the latest anthology film, George Lucas gets recognized by Disney, the Kennedy Center, and Coffee with Kenobi shares some exciting news. We also discuss the new Star Wars app.
We also discuss Dan's visit to Lucasfilm and catch up with Mediocre Jedi's live report from San Diego Comic-Con. A huge thank you to Mediocre Jedi, Mike Audette, Neil Lowry, Dennis Keithley, Matt Moore, Lillian Torres, and Eric Scrotch for their contributions to our Coffee with Kenobi Patreon page. We really appreciate it, and we will announce the winner of the first coffee chat on our next show.
And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
Oh, wait. This is interesting. You found something.
I'm about to let everyone in on the secret.
Hi, this is Cory Clubb, co-host of Coffee with Kenobi, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z and Jeff McGee. This is the podcast you're looking for.
For our first news story, Jeff, we had to do something pretty special because we've got a Han Solo film. It's official. The second anthology film is going to be about Han Solo. So we had to bring in somebody that we all know and love, Mr. Cory Clubb. Welcome to Coffee with Kenobi.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Cory. I've never spoken to you before.
Well, it's a pleasure, my friends. It's a pleasure. I'm excited. Very excited.
You're a big fan, right?
Huge fan. I've been here since the beginning, like the first show. I think we're here listening with you guys. So, all a good time.
Good. Well, this all started because, as Cory has said a few times throughout the history of the show, I text him incessantly, especially when things happen. And Jeff is on this gravy train, too. So we're all sending stuff back and forth. And I was just like, just come on for this segment. And Cory, you were like, what?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of those things that kind of blows all the other news out of the water. You know, it's a type of news that stops your daily work.
Tell us why. Just like you almost stopped our conversation. Tell us why.
Well, they've announced the first anthology. It's kind of a solo film, I guess. Han Solo film. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just giving you a rim shot. Sorry.
Oh, gotcha. Anyway, this is the kind of news that we've kind of I guess hinting around for a while now. Kind of been, I think, in the work. They've been talking about anthology films. The first one was the Rogue One anthology film that was released 3 or 4 months ago back at Anaheim. And this is the first one that we've kind of centered on a character we know is well known. And of course, to me personally, he's an iconic film character, Han Solo, of course. And this is, kind of his upcoming story. It's kind of, I would assume it's a younger version of him. We kind of see where he kind of comes from and his backstory and how he kind of made it into New Hope and before he met Luke and kind of got on the adventure there. But, there's some good things and bad things about this. In my perspective, of course, Lawrence Kasdan is writing the script, which is huge.
Because you were a little, was this the one you were a little nervous about at first, or was it the Batman Solo film? I can't keep track of your
there's so many
sporadic nature
going on now. Yeah, it's so weird because there's so many beloved things out there that we love, and it's shifting into this paradigm of newness, and I think it's hard for us to grapple that. It just is, and having this one of our beloved characters be made into a feature film, it's like, can you name anybody else could play Han Solo? You can't. Harrison Ford, that's his role. That's who he is, and that's going to be the big one for this. I think too. The second part of that is finding the right director, and they also announced that as well. It's Christopher Miller and Phil Lord, who also did the 21 and 22 Jump Street movies, which I thought were pretty dang funny, along with the Lego movie, which was a huge hit.
That's the big one.
It's I was concerned until I heard about the creative team, and then I thought, okay, as long as they cast it right, it's going to be gold.
But my problem with that is that they have they have a couple cartoon movies under the belt and two knockoff sequels of mediocre funny business, and does that work into a Han Solo film?
I think I think it does. I think it does, because here's the thing. How so? Well, for one thing, as you know, I mean, you obviously appreciate this as much as anyone, being a dad and an intelligent consumer of coffee and Star Wars.
Yes. Star Wars, it's like it.
It takes comics and animation. Remind me of a quote. I was going to say Twain in quote, so I came up with a new word, guys. Quote.
A quote.
This Mark Twain quote, or quote, as the case may be, was, the thing about fiction is that it's obliged to tell the truth. So animation and comics tell stories in a stronger way because they don't have to hide anything. They just let it all out there. I think you need the right amount of humor and the right amount of adventure and the right amount of fun, and that is sometimes what can be missing from a Star Wars story. So putting these guys in charge of it ensures it's going to happen. I think Han Solo needs to have that fun, playful snark. So this is brilliant.
Yeah, he needs a light touch, because the story itself, is going to carry some weight. So if you can tell a serious story with a light touch, it's a recipe for success.
Yeah, but my problem is it going to be kind of those younger, hip versions of, a movie we like with the young cast, doing one-offs and spinning goofy jokes and, on a heist or something like that, and then looking to, I don't know. It just seems like it's like a hangover movie waiting to happen in the Star Wars universe or something like that.
Oh gosh, I hope not.
I don't see that happening at all. I really don't. Because one thing about the Lego movie had a lot of heart. And,
it did.
And I think that's what they're going to bring to it. Oh, you're the only other person. I thought I was the last one to see it.
It's not on purpose. I really want to see it. I just haven't gotten a chance.
You're a busy guy. We get it.
So you still a little skeptical then after hearing?
Well,
I mean, poetic?
Us talking about it gets me excited. I can get behind all this. I mean, I think the biggest struggle they're going to have is casting Han Solo. So they have this guy kind of picked out to kind of, I guess some of the internet folks have picked him out, Anthony and Gruber, who has done some really impressive impressions of Harrison Ford in a number of different films, and he's also played a younger Harrison Ford in The Age of Adeline. And our good friend Rob from Bearded Show got to interview him for one of our little sections for the Bearded Trio. And, the problem with that guy is, to me, is he looks like he can play Harrison Ford really well, but can he play Han Solo? I mean, to me, it's like he's embodying Harrison Ford's moves and his, characteristics, and he's not embodying Han Solo. So you need an actor who can take on the role of Han Solo versus just make a impression of Harrison Ford.
You're right. I think of Chris Pine in the Star Trek films. Doesn't look a whole lot like Shatner, but to me, nailed the character. He made it his own, and I felt like I was watching James T. Kirk.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's the thing with a lot of the Bonds too. You want them to play a character, not play a bunch of character traits. Sometimes with the sitcom, after a while, you start to see. I was starting to worry with The Big Bang Theory, because I like that show. I know some people don't, but I love that show. And I started to worry that Sheldon was becoming a caricature of Sheldon. But he went back to that not happening, and he's back to just being a character. And I think they'll do that with Han Solo. I mean, again, we're talking about Kathleen Kennedy and Lawrence Kasdan and his son, people who get Star Wars, who know it and have a lot invested in it. Mm-hmm. They're going to make it right. The only thing about these guys who are famous for the Lego thing, I'm talking about
Lord and Miller.
Phil Lord and Christopher Miller.
Mhm.
They're busy. Like they're in charge. I guess they're like going to be doing the Flash movie, and they've got a lot of stuff under their belt. So I'm thrilled about this. I don't think anyone could be skeptical until you actually see the movie. I mean, how could you possibly know? I'm glad this is going to happen, and it is important to say that it's coming out May 25th of 2018. So we've got a lot of time to be curious and to find out information. But it's a beautiful thing. So Cory,
yes,
since you're here, dude, don't you think, Jeff, we should ask him our 5 questions?
Oh, absolutely. I'm dying to hear his answers.
You're finally on the other side of the microphone club.
There you go. That's right.
And I know it's popular for my good friend Cory to say that he's already answered these, but I think if everyone goes back and listens to our very first show, which, hey, if you haven't heard it, why not? Maybe you'll, maybe you shouldn't. You may not decide you want to keep subscribing. But we didn't really talk about it. So, Cory, what is your favorite Star Wars movie?
You know, it's funny because I'm sure if you went back and listened to it, it's probably different than it is now. I mean, like a lot of people say it changes. But you know, the one that I could put on that's just rewatchable is Empire Strikes Back. I mean, I think that's my favorite movie. You know, everybody goes after their one that's like the first one they saw, but you know, is that the favorite movie or is that just more of like nostalgia? You know, it's Empire Strikes Back has a great storyline, great characters, great storytelling, great events. It's just one of those films that everybody looks up to. I think as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, as an artist, they're able to piece together certain moments of emotion and that really reacts with everybody. So I think that's not necessarily it's always the best film because it's the second one and it did such a good job. I think it turns on the emotion. So I think that's the best part about it. So yeah, that's the favorite one for me.
That is the correct answer. Who is your favorite character from any of the movies?
Or it could be for anything. Look at him improvising. Thinks he's running the whole show now.
That'll happen after a while.
Yeah, another guy drunk with power.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Again, this is one of those things that kind of waxes, wanes with me, I think, as far as favorite characters. I mean, let's see, it's a Monday, so it could be anybody. I mean, but, you know, the go-to people for me are Luke and Han. Obviously, being a kid, growing up with getting to know these characters, you always want to be the hero, and you want to be the hero of the story, and you're on the journey, and, you know, sometimes you're the wayfaring, you know, teenager doesn't really know what's getting into, and then the next day you're going to be the rebel and going to be, you know, the cocky guy, and, you know, shooting first and asking questions later, and then, you know, it's I don't know, it's those kind of characters that always hang with me. But, you know, then there's always the wise Obi-Wan. So I don't know, it's such a toss-up for me. But now that Rebels has come on, it just changes the whole dynamic for me because I'm loving these new characters and the way they are. And so I'd throw Kanan in there as well, you know, as far as being, you know, one of my favorite characters. Just because I love him so much and what he embodies. You know, it's crazy because it's like, again, these movies just do so much for us, and they tell so many different stories of characters. And there's so many to choose from, but I'm gonna stick with what we've kind of been rolling around with. But Han Solo, man, he's the guy. He's the guy's guy. Everyone wants to be him. Every girl wants to be with him, and it's that type of character of cockiness that's like, I'd be awesome to be like that. So I don't know if it's just like my inner child working today, but I guess that's it.
Well, that's okay. You are on a Star Wars podcast. You're allowed. You know what though? Is that why you feel so passionate about this Han Solo movie? Do you care more about this one? And Jeff, you too. Do you guys care more about this Han Solo one than the Rogue One?
You know, actually, I don't. And I
really?
think it's a defense mechanism for me because there is a possibility that they're going to screw it up. And since he is, you know, the best character ever created in the history of anything,
that's strong.
Yeah. You know, that's how I feel. There is every possibility that it will not live up to expectations, and I don't want to be disappointed. So I hold more hope for being surprised by the quality of Rogue One. So I'm actually more excited about Rogue One just because there's less chance of it, you know, destroying any childhood memories.
I'm more excited about Han Solo than Rogue One. I'm the least excited about Rogue One, but that's not to say I'm not thrilled about it. And I've always wanted to know how the Death Star plans get in the hands of the rebels. But I don't know. I think it's just because Han Solo. The problem with the Han Solo thing, though, I know we're kind of getting off the 5 questions, is for almost 40 years we've known about this character. And whatever the backstory is, it's going to be hard to match what we played when we were kids with our Kenner figures, or what we imagined, or what we maybe saw in a comic, or the Brian Daley novels, or something like that. So, in many ways, this is as arduous a task to create as the Phantom Menace was, because you're reinventing something for a new generation. That being said, though, so much time has passed, it's not going to take away from Han Solo and Harrison Ford.
But just remember what happened when we found out where Boba Fett came from.
True, but over time we've kind of lined ourselves with that. We're kind of okay with it now. We're like, okay, we can get on with this.
Some of us are.
Well, I mean, when you look at
I'm kidding.
When you look at stills of Boba Fett, do you think of Daniel Logan? I mean, when I look at Empire Strikes Back and I see Boba Fett, I don't think, Daniel Logan. Oh, that's
no. It's true. I can divorce myself from the prequels when I'm watching the original trilogy. So I'm really just playing devil's advocate on this. But
I think that's a good point, Jeff. I mean, I think that's true. Yeah. I think with anything, even like with the new, we talk about Batman, Superman, and all that kind of stuff. It's those internal emotions that get stirred up, and nobody wants to mess with those. Those are ours. Those are ours. And why you mess with my thoughts and my characters and my actors and whatever it may be. And
right,
it's hard to wrap your mind around. It's hard to wrap your mind around a Han Solo movie. Like you said, it's easier to take in a Rogue One movie because it's all new characters we've never seen before or heard about or what may be. But it's those heart issues that we have to deal with and move on. So I'm excited for both. Like I said, and we sit here and kind of nail it down a little bit. But I'm excited for all, and I'll see it all 10 million times. So
I'm sure I already know the answer to this, but don't you guys both want Ford to have a cameo?
I want to do a voiceover. Yeah, definitely be awesome.
I want to be on screen.
An intro.
Sitting in the
would that ruin it though?
Chair.
Don't you think that'd be like a rocking chair?
It'd be like the episode of the Indiana Jones Chronicles that he did, where he was at the intro and the outro of it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
maybe it's Harrison Ford.
I don't know if that would work or not.
I want to see him play. I want to see him playing Han Solo's dad.
Well, that would be terrible. That's
and this is why they don't let me make movies, folks.
No, he's Han Solo. I mean, he's more Indiana Jones than he is anybody, but he's got to be in it in some regard. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, only time will tell. And like you said,
he's sitting around with Lumpy, and yeah,
we can go off speculation what we know so far, but we won't know until we sit in the movie theater and check it out. So, I mean, I'm crossing my fingers and toes and hair. So it's
in your hair.
I don't know.
So,
yeah, I cross my hair.
So, Cory, what is your favorite line of dialogue or film moment?
I don't have a favorite line of dialogue, but I do like saying once in a while. Like my kids were downstairs tonight, even and laughing in their bed. This is time for bedtime, and joking around. I walked down there. I said, "Laugh it up, Fuzzball." I know it's one of Jeff's favorite lines.
Yes,
and
that's good.
So it was. They laughed. They cracked up. And they knew exactly what it was from. And it's those kind of things you can throw out there. My favorite kind of lines are the ones are quotable. The ones you can kind of rip off a joke or play into a conversation, and everybody gets along and everybody has a good laugh. And it just shows your interconnection between not just the films but the characters. Again, and same back with the film moments. I remember watching Return of the Jedi and Luke kind of hiding underneath the stairs in the darkness, and Vader's taunting, and he comes out of the darkness and starts, no, and it starts going after Vader, and I remember that motion in my body. I was like, yeah. He said, it's just like I remember being a kid and feeling that emotion, like, no, don't let him get away with this, and it's just it's back those emotions that drive you so much into what you like, and for me, it's those type of moments that are the best.
I agree with you 100%. And I know that you are.
Podcast.
Yes, he should. And I know that you're not. You don't consider yourself much of a collector, but do you have an item in your possession that is a collectible that is just really close to your heart?
Since
he inspired me to get an office, actually.
There you go.
He's got some cool stuff.
I do have a couple things. I mean, not a whole lot of things, but it's hit and miss. But I have certain things. I guess I got some lightsabers and a couple other things. And I don't have too many action figures, and I've got a couple on card and stuff, but just nothing crazy. But I think
you got that cool Han Solo thing, like that.
I do. I have the drawing a friend of mine did.
Yeah.
You're talking about?
No, the figure you have that like him coming like off the.
Oh, what do you call that? I think I forgot what it's called. The one that's like
they're not
explosive.
Yes, Jeff you probably know Jeff. I can't.
Oh, the
think of name now.
Unleashed.
Unleashed. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, the Han Solo running a plank there. Yeah. I got that, and I have a couple other things, doodads and bebops and stuff like that. But
Bebops?
I think
that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That is not Star Wars.
I know I'm off. But I think it's some of those. I mean, I've got a Kanan card signed by Freddie Prinze Jr., which is pretty cool.
Oh,
I think
where'd you get that?
I got that from Freddie himself. That shook his hand.
Oh, really? I wish I was there.
It was a moment, man. Yeah. But again, like I was gonna say, as far as collectibles, I think I collect memories. I think the biggest memories I have is going to Anaheim and seeing on the podcasting stage, meeting all my friends in real person, in real life, and and just getting to know people. I think I collect memories. You can call it that. So it's
deep, brother.
I guess. Yeah, it's deep. I guess I'm being deep tonight. I guess it's Monday, so it's Deep Monday night. I don't know what that means, but
it's the
there you go. I guess it's part. So
yeah, how does it feel to be on the other side of the mic?
It's odd. It's intimidating.
You're intimidated by your own legacy you've created. So, Cory, last one, my friend. What particular messages or themes about the Star Wars saga resonate or speak to you?
It's as much as a Star Wars fan I am. I get the hero's journey thing, but I always look at it now that we've discussed so many topics on this show. I look at the saga as a whole piece, and I can't remember who said it, but it was like everything's just a one whole saga. It's a one whole story. It's not this episode or that episode or this book or that TV show or whatever. It's all one huge story, and I look at that more and more as we get in more stuff, more films and more TV series and stuff, and all kinds of collectibles, and it all rubs into this beloved thing we have. And I think that's just the type of theme of obviously it's we talk about family a lot, we talk about hero's journey and stuff. Those are kind of themes that I pick up on because that's prevalent in my life, and I look at it throughout the whole saga. Maybe it's Kanan and Hera, or it's Luke and Leia, or Anakin and Padme, or something like that for relationships, or friendships of Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ben Kenobi and Luke, and Han and Solo and Luke, and Chewie and Luke, and it's just there's so many different connections, and it's all such a driving force for compassion and doing the right thing and carrying on a legacy. So that kind of stuff speaks to me, and I'm excited to see where to go with Episode 7's new characters and how they're all going to connect, and I'm just excited to see where it's all going to go. As far as drawing near to the beloved characters we do have, and then adding into new ones. So that's exciting for me, and I'm can't wait to see it.
So that's very well said. I've always been wondering to see what you would say. I don't know what I would say when it's.
Well, maybe we'll find out next time, Dan.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. It'll be fun to go back and revisit Jeff's, actually.
Yeah.
That would be fun. So anyway, speaking of fun, it was super cool to have you on, even though it's briefly. We'll certainly have you. You're returning for show number 41, obviously. That's going to be our big Full of Sith two-parter, so that's going to be a good time. Cory, where can people reach out to you if they want to ask you a question or just say hello?
Well, I'm Cory C at coffeewithkenobi.com, and on Twitter at Cory Clubb. I'm on Facebook, all those places. I have coryclubb.com, kind of a blog thing I never blog on, and so I don't know if you can check it out. I have my book on there, some other links and stuff like that to my freelance design stuff at globaldesigns.com for freelance book cover art or graphic design and logo design. So I'm all over. Just Google me, I guess, but in the cool way. I don't know if there's two different ways to do that.
I don't really know what to say. I will say, and of course I'm biased, as is Jeff, but Cory's a heck of a writer, so you should definitely check out Uncanny Day.
Absolutely. One of my favorite books from the last several years.
Wow.
Seriously, yeah. Love that book.
Thank you.
I can't wait for the movie.
I can't wait for the sequel.
I cannot wait for the movie either. I don't know if you guys have heard, but
we should have cameos. Ooh, maybe
great.
Jeff, maybe this could be our chance to be action figures. The Uncanny Day action figure line.
Awesome.
New from Kenner.
There you go.
Our next news story concerns the San Diego Comic-Con Star Wars panel and some of the highlights that we saw there. The main highlight being the behind-the-scenes video that they played and has since been released online. And, this, I don't know how about you, but this to me, is better than a new trailer.
I agree. I completely agree.
I love the way I love the way they're doing this. They're promoting this thing in exactly the right way. We're seeing all sorts of images and glimpses from the movie, but they're not giving us any idea about the story. And it's making me even more excited without spoiling anything. And that, along with the fact that we're able to see, behind the scenes, we're able to see how many of the effects are practical and tangible. We're seeing the actors interact with one another. We get to watch Harrison Ford sit down in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. Oh, I seriously, I welled up again while I was watching this, just like I did when I saw the trailer at Celebration.
Did you see, we have a lot of the stills that Verizon sent us, which was really cool, and Lisa was kind enough to put them up for us. But there's an image of Han Solo, Harrison Ford, with a blaster. Did you see that?
No, I did not.
You gotta check it out. It's very cool. I agree with you. I think this is, in many ways, more powerful because we feel like we're a part of this. It's already part of our legacy as Star Wars fans and as a media culture, because we're seeing behind-the-scenes stuff already before we've even seen the movie, which I think is very clever. It's almost like Disney knows what they're doing.
It's like they've done this before,
right?
My favorite part of it was some of the panel, at least, was the quote when they were talking with Gwendolyn Christie, Adam Driver, and Domhnall Gleeson, and Gwendolyn Christie said, "I found it very exciting that underneath that armor is a woman, and it makes it more relevant than ever." And Gleeson just followed that up with said, "I am evil. He's British."
I know.
But that's one thing that you never think about is in Star Wars, all the evil characters have British accents.
Pretty much, except for Darth Vader.
Right. Well, he's James Earl Jones, and he doesn't need an accent to sound evil.
True. He's just cool. Yeah, I think there's so many wonderful things. We've got links to the full panel as well as the video itself. I want to look more specifically at this behind the scenes at StarWars.com released. Things that stand out, of course, the practical effects, the explosions with the stuntmen tied to those ropes, the way they're flying, and so it's just more realistic. You see C-3PO with a red arm. Did you notice that?
I've only watched it a couple of times, and I was just so caught up in watching it that I haven't gone back to watch much detail, but I did hear about that, and that's interesting, and it makes sense because we're 30 years later. I'm amazed R2-D2 still has both of his appendages. Well, maybe the red is almost like they're doing green screen stuff, so maybe it's going to be something else. I don't know. I don't know. I did notice that the TIE Fighter has the red panel on it as well. I don't know what that means, but that's very distinguished too. I wonder if that's a specific model. Well, they've released the one. I think it's a 1/6 scale, or maybe. I think it's in the 6-inch scale TIE Fighter that they released that has that red panel on it. So I think that... Are you talking about the Black Series one? Yes. Yeah, $180. No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, man, would that be a thing? But we'll save that for our collection segment. But right. But that's... there's a lot to like about this. The models, that creature from the first Force for Change Muppet thing walked out. I can't think of the name now. I should have actually... I lost it too. The thing that I did like, though, the other thing that I liked is there's one shot where they've got an archway, and the top of the archway is the shell from one of the ships. No, it's a shell from one of the ships from the prequels. Oh, yeah. So I like that we are seeing a little bit of that technology as well. They're not ignoring it. No, they aren't. But like you said before, I can't get enough of seeing the Falcon, the fact that they built it. I still have this incredible hope that in one of these Disney theme parks, they'll have that actual Falcon there to tour. Oh, that would be great. That would be great. Also, a Stormtrooper with a flamethrower. Yeah, which we saw those in Celebration Anaheim, but now we actually get to see it in action. And Simon Pegg. Do we know? He's clearly, I guess, playing a creature of some sort because he's got this rig on that looks like they're going to put a big mask over him. Well, let's talk about this. This caused a lot of... discussion online. The fact that Simon Pegg is in this and he's just glowing like a kid at Christmas about being in a Star Wars film. How do you feel about that whole Simon Pegg thing? Other than just being jealous that Simon Pegg is in a Star Wars movie and I'm not. I think that's a big part of it. That's pretty much it. I mean, what was it? This thing he made a comment. He made some comments about the prequels. He's made a lot of
very pejorative comments about the
and that's fine. He's a fan. He's got his opinions. You know, his career was started by a show that leaned heavily on his fandom as a sci-fi geek. So it's not like he doesn't have the geek cred to back up his opinions. I have no problem with it. And you're telling me,
yeah, I agree.
Right, but I have no problem with it. You're telling, I mean, I don't care if I hated everything that had happened since the first 3 movies. If George Lucas had asked me to be in Episode 3, I would have jumped at the chance. And I defy you to find somebody who would. And so I have no problem with it. Plus, he looks like he's having a good time. I know he's going to do a good job with whatever he does, even if it's a minor character. I know he's going to give it his all. And
he was Dengar in the Clone Wars.
And that's where people really started having a problem with it, because this was not too long after he had really disparaged the prequels. And I just thought, he's an actor. This is a role. He's allowed to have opinions, and he's allowed to get work.
Well, actually, the only thing about Simon Pegg is not even him. It's more, and by the way, his explanation of lens flare, which we talked about when one of our very first shows we ever did, where we reviewed Star Trek Into Darkness. But he's pretty smart. He's pretty darn smart. Not only is a gifted actor, but he's also a pretty intelligent filmmaker. So that was cool. My biggest issue around this whole thing has nothing to do with him being in it, but the fact that Dengar is pronounced Dengar. Why isn't he pronounced Danger? What is up with that? It sounds like I'm doing a bit. I mean, it's not like I'm an expert in phonetics. Oh, wait. I am. Why is it pronounced Dengar? Any idea?
I always assumed that it was because it was Dengar, Dengar.
Yeah, but you don't say Wingar, the famous, 80s heavy metal band.
No, but that's Winger.
Yeah, but R, I mean, there's no long A, there's no accent above it. Boy, we really derailed the show, haven't we?
No, this is extremely interesting to me, and it's probably interesting to at least 2 more of our listeners.
That's true. One of them's named Cory.
Yeah. Well, if you reversed it and it was Danger, it would be danger. So by your rationale, shouldn't it be Dinger?
Yeah. Maybe.
But it's Star Wars, and
it's
things
Star
aren't
Wars,
always
and they
pronounced.
play loose with the phonetics.
Exactly.
And they rhyme in all this. I wonder if when he was first created as a character, that Kenner said, he's going to be Dengar.
And somebody said, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Food for thought. Anyway, other things about the video that I loved, and I didn't catch it the first time, and here's an interesting thing. When this video came out, I was driving to an airport in Chicago because my family and I were going to San Francisco, which we'll talk about very soon. And so Cory's texting me like nonstop, which was kind of fun. And so I finally gave the phone to my wife, and I said, will you tell me what Cory's saying? So she's telling me about this video, and Cory's giggling.
Kudos to you for not texting and driving. Let me just say that.
Well, heck, my family's in the car. Right, and I don't want anyone to die. So, but thank you. So then she said, hey, Cory's really excited. He's practically giggling. And I'm adding that part in, that he's seen this video and you haven't. So when I got to the airport, I did watch it, and I loved it, but I didn't notice Princess Leia in costume until I saw a still of it later. I didn't that Mark Newbold posted. Yeah.
I still haven't caught it as I'm watching it. I'm watching it right now,
and
wonderful. I still can't catch it.
It's wonderful. There's one of her talking with J.J. Abrams too.
I love the memes. Have you seen the meme that's come out? It's the still shot of Han and Chewie where he says, Chewie, we're home. And then it's a shot of her and it says, where have you been?
No, I haven't seen that. So anyway, it's great fun, and we apologize for the lateness of our commentary on this and the Han Solo thing, but we've been busy here getting stuff ready for this next cup of coffee for you. So let us know what you think, and we're happy to share it with everyone else. Okay, so 2 exciting things are going on for George Lucas and George Lucas fans. And how could you be listening to the show and not be a George Lucas fan, honestly? But he's receiving a bunch of rewards at the D23 Expo in Anaheim, which I've always wanted to go to, and now this makes it even worse. He's going to be honored with the Disney Legend Award. And for those of you who are not familiar with D23, it's actually this year, well, it's always at the Anaheim Convention Center where Celebration Anaheim was. But the Disney Legend comes out, and they speak, and there's this huge, beautiful tribute, and there's a lot of famous people there to honor them. I would love to be there. My goodness, to see George Lucas in person, a beautiful thing. I wish I could see it.
No kidding.
By the way, who else is going to be honored this year is Danny Elfman, which I don't know how he fits into the Disney family, but right on.
Well, Susan Lucci, I don't know how she fits in either.
Well, ABC.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
And then there's a bunch of other ESPN, George Bodenheimer. So quite a group, but having George Lucas there. But this isn't where the George Lucas fund stops either. Did you see what else he's getting?
Yeah, Kennedy Center honors.
That's huge.
I thought he had already gotten this once before. Maybe it was another... he was honored several years ago because I know he picked Maroon 5 to be the band because his daughters were fans of them. And I thought that just says everything about George Lucas. He's sort of the ultimate family man.
Agreed.
But I guess it wasn't the Kennedy Center honors because this is huge.
It's wonderful. And you know, did he get this kind of recognition when he was an active filmmaker? I don't think so. Not unless you were a huge Star Wars fan. But I think even if you weren't, you had to appreciate what he added to film. And now that he's retired, people are looking back and saying, wow, he did contribute a lot. And to be fair, probably some people are doing this because you put George Lucas on a bill, it's going to sell some tickets, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's the people that are being honored with him as well. It's a very distinguished list. You've got Eagles, Carole King, Cicely Tyson, and Rita Moreno are among the other honorees. And I mean, that's, titans of the entertainment industry. So
in a lot of different fields too.
Yeah, and that'll air December 29th. It takes place December 6th, and the presentation will be telecast December 29th on CBS. So I'll be on the lookout for that right after Christmas. That'll be a nice little follow-up to the Christmas break that I will not get this year. For our final news story, this is something that is huge news for those of us here at Coffee with Kenobi, and I believe it's for Dan in particular. Those of you who read might know that there was a novel called Tarkin that came out fairly recently, detailing the early life of the man who would become Grand Moff Tarkin. And the paperback edition was recently announced, and the back of the paperback edition carries something that's a little special. Dan, tell us a little bit about what you might see on the back of the paperback release of Tarkin.
Yeah, the back of the paperback of Tarkin has a blurb from my review of it, which was stunning. And I actually found this out because Roku Depot sent us something on our Twitter feed and said, "Congratulations, kudos, great quote." And I ran and I said to my wife, "I think I'm on the back of a book." And she said, "You are? We got to go check it out." So I went to Barnes & Noble and I saw it, and I couldn't believe it, so I took a picture of it and sent it to Cory. It's really nice. It's just, our little show continues to have many blessings and support, and I'm really appreciative that Del Rey took the time to do that. It was a neat thrill. What can you say?
It was great, and again, they're absolutely right. The quote on the back, if I may, I'll just read it.
Sure.
The quote says, "A spectacular novel with the intrigue, action, and profound characterization we have come to expect from the pen of Lucino, one of the best authors of Star Wars fiction writing today." And again, it's very well thought out, very, very descriptive and clean, and just again, further evidence that you guys have the classiest podcast out there. And
thanks, man. I appreciate it.
It's true. This is like as people call this the NPR of Star Wars podcasts. So I'm trying my best not to class it down too much.
Oh wow, well that's awesome.
But yeah, that it was great, and I love that. I understand you were the author, but I feel like you would prefer to have Coffee with Kenobi listed instead of just Dan Zare.
It's so true.
So it will push people to the website, and that's great.
Yes.
And so anyone out there who goes to pick up the book, be sure and take a look at the back so you can see Dan's words on the back of a paperback novel. It's great. And you recently, and by recently I mean the last 2 or 3 days, got back from a trip to San Francisco. Another reason I'm jealous of the life that you lead. And while you were there, you got to do something that not many people get to do.
Yeah, I got to tour Lucasfilm. Right?
Yeah, I know. Tell us, if you can. I don't know how much your non-disclosure agreement allows you to say, but can you tell us a little bit about how this came about? How you ended up getting to do this?
Yeah, well, basically, I since I write for Stars.com, and I've become friends with a lot of the folks at Lucasfilm. It just kind of worked out that I got asked to take a tour, and of course, the 5-year-old in me was just so happy, and the 42-year-old in me was so happy because it's such a blessing. So My family and I went, at the time of this recording, we went last week, and we got to tour. We got to see a lot of great stuff. I got to go into the theater where they have the digital theater that Lucas screens everything, which is a gorgeous theater. The acoustics in there, oh my gosh. I don't think I've ever experienced anything like it in my life. And honestly, when we were in there, we didn't get to see any footage, and I didn't think that we would. And anyone who knows me knows that if they were going to show me footage, I would have ran away screaming because I want to wait until it's time.
No spoilers!
Yeah, exactly. But it was just, you could just tell when you walk in there, just a different atmosphere to it. I got to see a lot of great props. There's a lot of amazing things in Lucasfilm. I got to walk by Jabba the Hutt, which actually exists. It really is a little coffee house for the Lucasfilm employees. And got to see Matt and Dan and Andy from StarWars.com, and so that was really cool to see them and see how they're doing. And then maybe the coolest part about it, well, there are a lot of cool parts, just experiencing that with my family was pretty wonderful, was the Lucasfilm store. Holy goodness.
Yeah, you sent me a picture of all of your gets from there, to use a Troy Metzler phrase.
Yes.
Or term, I should say.
That's our classic Geeks Helping Geeks one, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, basically you spread it out all over your hotel bed, and I don't think there would have been room for anybody to even think about laying down on the bed.
Exactly. It was cool. My favorite thing that I got, well, I think one of my favorite things is they had a few of the jacket, the Rebels crew jacket.
I'm so jealous of this.
So I snagged that thing up.
That thing is cool.
It's very cool. So
now,
my favorite part though was that I'm like, the people I was walking around with, I said, I think I'm showing a lot of restraint, and Deanna said, well, that's because your wife is with you, and we had a good laugh. She was awesome. She was so supportive, of course, and I think it was a thrill for her and the boys too, because they like Star Wars, but they like it more in moderation than I do.
Right.
So even seeing the fountain, which the public can take a picture in front of the fountain, you don't have to pay or have any kind of special pass or anything. It's just right there. You just turn a corner and there it is, and it's just gorgeous and breathtaking.
And you sent me can we say that you sent the picture of the Indiana Jones statue?
Yeah, because that's out in the public.
Yeah, well, my favorite part of the whole trip was you sent me a picture of the Indiana Jones statue, and I think I told you, I texted you back for a split second when I looked at it. I thought it was a statue of Dave Filoni because of the hat, and I thought, well, that's weird. And then I realized what it was, and I thought, oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah, that was another part of the trip that was fun. We I realized where we were at, that San Anselmo was not too far away, and discerning listeners will know one of our first shows, they just created a very small park in San Anselmo, which is where George Lucas grew up. And they have a replica of the Yoda statue from Lucasfilm there, and they have a life-size statue of Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. So I thought, it's 20 minutes away, we gotta go see this. So we went and we saw that. I took a bunch of pictures. I'll put a video up on the Facebook page. But it's really, really cool. It literally is like in the middle of a downtown, quaint little California neighborhood. So I would hardly, calling it a park is really generous. It's more like a small backyard. But the fountain is gorgeous. So I feel really happy that I got to see that and the Yoda one from Lucasfilm. It was a really fun experience.
Yeah, it looks like you guys had a lot of fun. I'm glad you got to do that, and thanks for sending back all the pictures so that we could sort of take the trip with you a little vicariously.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure.
Han Solo, Rebel Soldier, Lando Calrissian, and Bespin Guard, each sold separately. From Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection, new from Kenner.
Looking? Found someone you have, I would say,
Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection.
For the first item in the collector news segment today, we are talking about something that's not very necessarily a tangible item. The official Star Wars app launched for both iOS and Android users. And Dan, I assume you've downloaded this app?
I did, the first day.
First day, I did too. And this thing is a lot of fun. My favorite feature, this is going to sound weird, but my favorite feature is the weather feature.
I agree. I totally agree.
Except that I live in Texas, and we've already reached Tatooine status.
Oh man! Well, if they measured humidity, we'd have reached in Illinois for sure.
Yeah, we've been
yabbing.
No
humidity.
Yeah, exactly. We've been Yavin and Kashyyyk for most of the week because it is so humid. I thought it was hilarious that when I first downloaded the app, it was set for San Francisco, which is where Lucasfilm is based, and it said it feels it feels like indoor, and I thought, well, that makes sense because they filmed the indoor sequences in Northern California. So
I did go to a redwood forest, by the way, not the one where they filmed Jedi, but man, are those gorgeous. Anyway,
I would love to do that someday. But yeah, the that and the selfie section, which I've already posted a picture of myself as Princess Leia, which horrified everyone on my Facebook friends list, which is what I was going for. But you can do Jedi Knight, Princess Leia, Han and Carbonite, which doesn't work that well for me. Have you had any luck with that?
You know what? I have the problem that I have whenever I think about if I were to be carbon frozen. I don't know what kind of face I would make, so I just have to wait until I can come up with a perfect expression. But it worked well when I was goofing around with it.
Maybe it's just my face doesn't work well in Carbonite.
No, you've got a face for Carbonite. Don't kid yourself.
Most people say I have a face for radio.
No, the app's got news, updates. It's got this incredible augmented reality thing where you can do a scan and the Stormtrooper and BB-8. You can get like a virtual reality version of that, which more on that later once I play it a little bit more. Pretty cool. You can see the videos. There's a really, really cool Force trainer where you can basically do a virtual game in the room you're in where you're using your lightsaber as a trainer. Have you done that?
I have. It's really a lot of fun. It took me a few tries to figure it out, but once I did, it was a lot of fun. And I also love the soundboard.
And the GIFs, yeah.
And the GIFs, yeah. I sent one of those the other day to somebody. It was the What Are You Talking About that I sent to somebody the other day because I just couldn't understand what this guy was trying to tell me. So I sent him the GIF of Han Solo saying, "What are you talking about?"
See, I accidentally sent the What Are You Talking About Willis, but that's for another app.
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder how many people will get that joke. So there's a fun thing on the Star Wars history, the soundboard, and then, of course, like we said, the weather. It's Star Wars themed weather. Basically what it does, if for those of you who don't know, you click the weather and it somehow links with the natural Apple weather app anyway. I think that's when it links with. I'm not 100% sure on that. So. And it will tell you like where you're at in your actual weather, and it's real with the rain, snow, whatever is going on. But it also will put like, oh, if it's really cold, you're in Hoth. If it's really high, you're in Tatooine. If you're underwater, well, you're probably drowning. So it's pretty darn slick. Very, very creative. I talked to some of the folks who designed and got this app rolling, and they're all really passionate about it and really proud of it, and they should be. It's a really, really fun thing, a fun way to experience Star Wars, and it doesn't cost anything, so definitely download it and check it out.
And yeah, it's a great way to link to everything Star Wars. There's a link to the website. So far, there's not a link to Coffee with Kenobi, but we are working on that.
That's right. We're already on their community page, so you never know.
There you go.
Our next collector news segment, Mediocre Jedi, who's a blogger for us and just an all-around great guy and Star Wars fan, who we hope to have on Rebel Reaction this season. He did a report from San Diego Comic-Con for us and talked to the good folks at Hasbro, so we'll share this with you right now.
Nice. Alrighty, this is Mediocre Jedi here for Coffee with Kenobi, live at San Diego Comic-Con 2015. I guess I'm technically not live, but I'm recording it. And I am down at the Hasbro Toys booth with Joe. Can you pronounce your last name for me?
Ninavaji. Hey,
Joe,
guys, how are you?
Joe Ninavaji. Thanks very much for your time today, Joe.
Course.
Just I wonder about the figures here. Obviously, there's a whole lot of excitement on Twitter last night about this. Is this the level of excitement you expected for the release of the First Order Stormtrooper?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been thrilled to get him out there, and when we were able to reveal it a few weeks ago, the result was positive. We sent out some samples for some of the sites to review. Those were really positive, so we knew we had something awesome here.
Yeah, obviously a lot of people lined up for it, and lots of excitement, of course, for all the other figures as well. Speaking of those other characters, can you talk about any other Force Awakens characters that are soon to be released?
I cannot. The Empire or the First Order won't let me. So
of course,
yeah,
of course, the Supreme Leader might have an issue with that.
Exactly. But in good time. Obviously, Force Friday, September 4th, is when our product line hits shelves, so there's going to be, a lot that you guys get to see right then and there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lots of excitement for that as well. Will female and male characters be released at the same time and in roughly equal numbers?
I can't speak to the weighting, but absolutely, yeah, we're going to have female and male for sure. I mean, we've already got, a decent amount of female characters that came out in the spring, but yeah, as we move into fall, there's a lot of really powerful, awesome new female characters that are going to get, good share of figure form.
Absolutely. I know that Sabine and Hera, there was lots of buzz on the internet about where's Hera, where's Sabine.
Yeah.
They were hard to find.
They were, yeah. I mean, we produced them. I don't think we produced enough of Rebels in general. So, that was difficult for us this spring to get them all out there. But, Rebels is not going away for us. Obviously we're going to be focusing on The Force Awakens and the new movies, but we're still going to be doing a lot behind Rebels. And you could expect to see, Sabine and Hera making their appearances soon.
That's good to hear, most definitely. Which of the Black Series figures are you most proud of yourself?
I love the Leia Bouche. I've got the same question in Celebration and the same answer then. She's phenomenal. I mean, I think just, her deco is great. The accessories she comes with, she's such an awesome figure. So, personally, she's my favorite we've done so far.
It's funny you mentioned that. I know that the Leia Bouche it's probably my favorite. I hate to use the expression look, but it's one of my favorite looks for her.
Yeah.
It's a great role she plays there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Speaking of, and I know you're a very busy man, don't want to keep you too long. Speaking of Force Friday, we would be happy to have you on the show, Coffee with Kenobi podcast, if you'd like to come on the show to talk about it. And if as far as that goes, any other final comments that you may have?
No, I mean we're thrilled. We're so excited that we're able to just have this great collection come out on Force Friday, and we look forward to your thoughts on them when you see it. But yeah, I mean, give us a shout. We'd love to be part of your podcast. It'd be great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Have a great day, and may the Force be with you.
You too, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Thanks for your time.
And thank you again for getting that Mediocre Jedi. We really appreciate it and look forward to your next blogs.
Also, I love the title. I love his name, Mediocre Jedi. Cracks me up every time.
And we've met him and hung out with him. He's far from mediocre.
Far from.
He's pretty awesome. Great family man.
Top-notch Jedi, if you ask me.
Yes, great guy, absolutely.
Well, our final item in collector's news today is one that I can't decide how I feel about it. I've had so many people on my Facebook page ask me my thoughts on it. It's the Hot Toys Millennium Falcon 1/6 scale toy that will end up being 18 feet long. And we're not sure if it's going to go into production yet. If it does, I can't imagine they're going to sell more than 2 or 3, to be honest with you, because who has room for this thing?
It's insane. I mean, and this is coming from the guy who bought the Innovo Stormtrooper armor, so who's the more foolish, right?
Yeah, but at least you can wear that.
True. I mean, it looks neat. The Hot Toys, like the sculpts of the figures and their faces, they've always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. They almost kind of look like 70s testosterone.
A little bit. They're sort of in that uncanny valley territory where they just kind of they look almost too human, but not quite human enough, and so they kind of give you the creeps.
I agree. Like Han Solo doesn't. There's nothing that looks charismatic about him.
With the exception of like the Joker toys that they've done, I think anything when it's a human face that's painted or a non-human face, I think they look phenomenal. But when they try to sculpt a human face, it's just very difficult to do.
Agreed.
But this thing, again, I can't. We don't have a price point or anything on it, but I can't imagine that it's going to be anywhere close to affordable. And I just don't. I don't know.
Well, you mentioned earlier in our news segments the Black Series new TIE Fighter that they previewed.
Right.
That's actually it's the first vehicle that's actually scaled to the Black Series.
The 6-inch Black Series, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I believe that's right.
No, you're correct. Especially if it's $180, it better be.
Yeah, exactly. And wow. I mean, it would be definitely a focal point of a collection, but
it looks amazing. But yeah, if that's $180, this thing's got to be like $180,000.
I wonder if they'll ever do a Black Series Millennium Falcon. I'm sure that they've talked about it, but that would almost have to be like something where like a Hasbro collector exclusive or something.
It would have to be, and they would have to fix it with something to where it could be hung from the ceiling, because that's the only way it would ever fit in anybody's house.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's a gorgeous item. It looks fantastic. I'm not, again, with a lot of these things, seeing the designs, they're neat and they're breathtaking, but until I have a memory to assign to it based on the films, it's going to be hard to really invest almost $200 until I've seen it in action.
Right, exactly.
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
I must be allowed to speak.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
Our topic for show number 40 is the psychology of collecting. What is the mindset of a collector? How much of collecting is nostalgia? And when is collecting too much of a good thing? Joining us to discuss this topic is returning guest, Dr. Andrea Letamendi. We first had Drea on show number 11 back in January of 2014 and are thrilled to have her back for a cup of coffee. Welcome back, Drea.
Hi, thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. Well, the response was just so great, and it was fun for me personally because I love talking about Star Wars naturally, but talking about Batman is so much fun, and there's no one better than listening to you and Brian when you guys talk about Batman. And your show and your wonderful career, everything has just gone so exciting for you guys. So tell us what's going on in your life.
Oh, thanks. That's so nice. I can't believe it's been over a year since we last talked on your show. We had several conventions. Comic-Con is one of the conventions that we love going to, and we've just gotten back. And it was quite a busy show with panels about the psychology of Star Wars, with, of course, a lot of discussion about our podcast, which, as you mentioned, is the psychology of the show Batman, the animated series. So
the best animated show of all time.
Exactly. So it's always fun to talk about that show. And yeah, since we last talked, I've been writing a lot about the psychology of comic book characters and science fiction and fantasy. And I just did my first TED Talk, and it's up now. And it's about the psychological power of superheroes.
And I actually watched that the other day. And I know you'd said you were a little nervous about posting it, but you hit it out of the park, my friend.
Oh, thank you. I feel, when I posted it, there is a period of time between recording a TED Talk and then it getting posted online. And that period of time, I would say, is an easy period of time because you've done all this hard work and you're just kind of waiting. But once it gets posted, that initial, I guess, the same anxiety that I felt when I stepped onto the TED stage kind of resurfaced because I was feeling like, oh, a whole new audience is going to see this and what will be their reaction and what will happen. And so thank you for the kind words. So far, the reaction has been really positive and very accepting, and a number of people have kind of come out and approached me on social media and have said, like, your story is very similar to mine, and I appreciate that you spoke up and kind of came out about your geekiness and about your passions, because the same doubts that you had are ones that I've had in my life. So it was really nice to hear those personal stories.
I think it's also encouraging, and it sort of reinforces us as individuals. And on our show, we have a wide-ranging audience, but we have intelligent people listen to the show, and people like to have discussions about things that we've liked since we were children, and we've carried that with us through adulthood. So it's neat and awesome to hear you talk about things like this, which we care about, and now you can give us a new way to blend our passion into our intuition and our knowledge as well.
Yeah, very well said. That's kind of the dream is to figure out how to combine, your fandom, your passion with your day-to-day life, with your profession, the thing that you do every day. And I think that's always a challenge, and it's always a fear, that people have. Like, what if these things were to be intersected or combined in that way? And my experience was very positive with that.
Sure. Well, it's almost as like what this topic is about, Trey, because that is a perfect transition. And I'm so glad, of course, we love having Cory on the show. He helped me co-host the show and create it. But Jeff has been an integral part of Coffee with Kenobi and in the MVP, I may say, especially recently. So Jeff is a huge collector. I love collecting. You just got back from Comic-Con, so we've got all these amazing things going on with Star Wars, with collecting, with fandom. So, and I know this is a really broad question, an extremely broad question, actually. And we also know that there are no absolutes because we're not Sith here. But if you could analyze for us the psychological mindset of a collector.
Yeah, you're right. It's a very broad question, but you mentioned comic conventions. You mentioned one of the biggest ones, which is San Diego Comic-Con. And I think, I should probably disclose, I would consider myself a collector of things. And so I think that, first and foremost, there is that, if you go to a show like Comic-Con, so many folks there are experiencing that rush, that excitement of what is the newest action figure, what is the the thing I'm looking for in this show? And, how long am I waiting in line for it? How much will I pay for it? Where will I find it if I can't get it here? Like, I don't think those thoughts are, by any stretch, bizarre thoughts. Like all those thoughts are actually very common for a comic convention or a pop culture convention. So I think my first answer to your question is that collecting just in and of itself is not necessarily indicative of anything psychologically harmful or different or bizarre. And in fact, many of us, most people in their lives at some point will feel a particular need or interest in collecting something, whether it was when you were a kid, you collected comic books or stuffed animals, or when you were a teenager, you were like, I know folks that collected spoons, from all over as they were traveling. And I know some people will continue to be interested in that sort of thing for the entirety of their lives. And for maybe many of your listeners, Star Wars action figures and collectibles is a huge, huge commonality. So the mindset is, for a collector, is usually that of being excited and being positive and feeling very fulfilled with their collection. And certainly there's that additional drive, like, what else? What am I missing in my collection? What else do I really want? What's on my wish list? What am I going to this convention to acquire? So the collections themselves, the acquisition of items and objects, and that fulfillment that we feel when we acquire something that we're really into, all of that is completely, that all falls within the normal realm of psychological functioning.
Well, even when you mentioned the idea of it's basically the thrill of the hunt, the thrill of the chase. I remember not so long ago, me and my two older boys, we were at Walmart, of all things, and which has a lot of good Star Wars goodies if you know where to look. But that was when the Star Wars toothbrushes came out, and you hit the button and it would flash as long as you're supposed to brush, which is great for kids.
I have one of those, actually.
Oh, I have all of them. But I had to hunt in like 4 or 5 different Walmarts, and when me and the boys found them, I was so excited. And I think part of it for me was reliving being a kid, but another part of it was sharing it with them for the first time, and they kind of getting them the thrill of the hunt and the chase. So it very much resonates with what you're saying.
I have a question for you two, actually, because I feel like there are waves of availability of Star Wars toys and Star Wars collectibles, and it seems like there's a kind of tiers of the collectability. I don't even think that's a word, but so for instance, in the mid 90s, there was a surge. There was like suddenly a surplus, a high amount of Star Wars stuff. It was like, because of the re-release of the films and gearing up toward the prequels, I think that there was suddenly more availability. Like you couldn't order a pizza without a stormtrooper being on top of the box. Right. And I'm saying this because there was a time, I don't know, late 80s, early 90s.
We call it the dark times.
So did you experience that? Like suddenly, and I think it's happening right now again, where you can go to Target or Walmart. I hope I can say names of these stores.
Sure.
You go and, you can't, go to the gas station. You can't go to, the grocery store, or whatever you do, you're surrounded by Star Wars stuff. And I'm saying that in a positive way, but I feel like that is happening again, where it's everywhere.
It's been ubiquitous.
It's been pretty much omnipresent since about 95, 96.
It is 95, because I remember the classes I was taking, and then every Thursday after class, I'd leave class and I'd go to Walmart and get 2 new action figures.
Oh, I remember vividly. It was my freshman year of college, fall of 95. I was in a mall in Texarkana, Texas, of all places, seeing a girl that I was dating. Walked into a KB Toys. I looked down and there's a Luke Skywalker on the peg. First one I'd seen in 10 years. But it seemed like 20 years at the time. To say that I freaked out might not even be an understatement. Thankfully, she did not break up with me at the time.
Good for her.
Yeah, but got it home, and only years later did I realize, God, this figure kind of stinks, because it was that He-Man Luke where he was all muscle bound and everything.
I love those.
And well,
no,
it was a long saber too, so it wouldn't even stand up. So, but you're absolutely right, Drea, that it's been pretty omnipresent. But we do go through phases. Right now, Dan, you were talking about going to Walmart and being able to find great stuff. I can't find anything. I can't find anything here in Texas, here in the Dallas area. Every once in a while at Target, I'll find something, but Walmart can't find a thing, which is good for my pocketbook.
It's true. Well, and that's interesting way to look at it. And I don't know about YouTube, but sometimes when since it ebbs and flows, and right now we're obviously on this huge wave, it probably won't slow down for a while. But when it dies down, you kind of, your other interests, those rise to the top as well. And it's kind of nice, because I don't think personally that it's healthy to just be Star Wars 24/7, 365 for years and years. How could you not get burned out?
That, you bring up a really good point. Can you kind of get oversaturated to where it cheapens the value of these things? And we're really kind of talking about that is not just the mindset of a person who's collecting, whether they call themselves a collector or not, but the value they place on these items and objects and toys. And I think that for me, I've kind of limited myself in that if I see something and it has, so I'm a huge Darth Vader crazy fan, right? So it used to be that anything that had Darth Vader on it, I would just immediately acquire without questioning it, without really caring about the price or real value of it. And over time, over the years, I've sort of gotten a little bit more mindful and practical, and I think kind of things have been more meaningful. Like just, I don't need all of the toothbrushes. I don't need all of the stickers. I don't need all of the, paper plates that you can toss away. What I do find a lot of value in is, some of the very old action figures from the late 70s, early 80s, or the sideshow collectible stuff. Amazing collectibles that I may not even take out of the boxes. And so I say value, and I don't necessarily mean monetary value. I mean the meaning that particular toy has for me in relation to my fandom of Star Wars. And I will say that since I did watch some of the Clone Wars, and I've watched a little bit of Rebels, and I'm not immediately drawn to any of those, items that are related to those particular shows. So in a way, I'm very, I guess, limited in the things that I will select and the things that I will put on my wish list. And I think for me that tends to preserve the meaning that the collectibles, that my collection as a whole has. And it's not to say that for folks who want to acquire quantity over quality so much. Like for a lot of people that I know personally, they acquire anything that has Star Wars on it, whether it's about, A New Hope or the TV show animated series, or, even some of the upcoming films that basically it is a black and white, all or nothing kind of thing. And it really is about surrounding themselves with their fandom. And that speaks to kind of what for some people may be completely healthy. And I think for other people, it may drive them toward something that's a little bit more maladaptive, where their collecting turns into something like hoarding.
Well, Andrea, that brings me to a question I had for you. I have said on several occasions on Coffee with Kenobi before, and on several of my other podcasts, I've likened the mind of a collector, and that you were talking about the thrill of the chase and all of that, that impetus to collect, I've likened it to a low-level addiction. And do you think that there's something to that? Is it, and which brings into question, do we then start to experience the law of diminishing returns? How does the mind of a collector relate to the mind of an addict? And I understand that not all collectors are created equal, but in particular, someone like a person like you were talking about, who just has to have everything that's on the shelf. Yeah, I think certainly when you say the addiction piece, that speaks to me in the same way that, we would say someone who drinks a lot of coffee might be addicted. Would they be able to stop if it was interfering with their physical health, mental health, social functioning, relationships,
and they continue to do it nonetheless, then yeah, it would start to lead into it being a problem. Certainly there's gray area there, right? So for some people who, I should probably first say, for some people who collect, an extremely large amount of whether it's Star Wars or anything else, any other kind of fandom, and find that fulfilling and positive, and it doesn't interfere with their lifestyle in any way, then we wouldn't say that they necessarily have a problem. One might say like, heck, that's a lot of stuff.
Right.
That's a little abnormal. And you could even say, well, and it's also seems very addictive. Someone is spending a lot of money on it. They're into the thrill of the chase. But for the most part, they find it very fulfilling and satisfying, and they have a lot of enjoyment in life. Then we really wouldn't say there's anything wrong with that. We wouldn't consider that maladaptive. The flip side of that coin, of course, is if that person is experiencing a lot of distress, and you might wonder, like, well, why would doing something that they love cause a lot of distress? And that would be from the feelings of incredible anxiety and sadness and depression, and overall distress related to the inability to have the things that they want to have because it's still on their list. Like, I need to acquire, I need to
that makes
this, that, and the
sense.
other.
Right.
And then we're talking a little bit about the thrill of the chase or acquiring things, but what about the ability to be fulfilled and satisfied with what we have? So for a person who is, kind of looking upon the things that they have, and rather than feel fulfilled and enjoy, they actually feel distress. Like, oh, I would never be able to part with any of this. What if something terrible happened? What if something happened to my things and I wasn't here? What if someone moved my things and I wasn't here? So then we're kind of leading toward symptoms that are more in alignment with someone who has a hoarding problem. And there is actually a diagnosis.
Like Gollum.
Yeah, it's that just sort of like tremendous anxiety over an object. And, I know that there have been TV shows and some stuff in the media that has taken this idea and really exploited it. But there is a disorder called hoarding disorder, and it has a lot to do with somebody's inability to discard the things that they have and the inability to really make decisions based on those things. So I'll give you an example. If for some reason a collection took over a home in the sense that the person wasn't able to go into their kitchen and cook a meal for themselves, or a family member didn't have a room to sleep in because, like, imagine if your son didn't have a room to sleep in because you wanted to put all your Star Wars collectibles in that room, and your child didn't have a proper place to sleep. Those are the kinds of things we would look to and think like, okay, this is starting to become an issue. And, furthermore, if it causes physical distress, then we would certainly be alarmed by it. Are you not eating or sleeping because you're too busy on eBay, acquiring these things or traveling to get these things? Would you rather put dollars toward an action figure versus, a meal for yourself or your family? You might do that on one night at Comic-Con, but not for your lifestyle, so once you start seeing that interference with your physical, mental, social functioning, and even, your financial functioning, then you've got problems.
Wow. Everything you were saying, I had a lot of different thoughts and ideas. So this is definitely generating the kind of discussion that we love here on Coffee with Kenobi. So thank you for that. When we're talking about, you mentioned hoarding, and I think you've probably answered this already, but there's a fine line between collecting and hoarding. Perhaps that's fair to say. I know for me, my wife likes to joke when we got married, we added on to our home, and we have this huge attic. And I would say probably 75% of the attic is my Star Wars stuff. Now, to be fair, I had this stuff before I got married. So, and we've got, all our other stuff. We've got plenty of room, and no one is suddenly suffering for space. But I could definitely see where someone would say, well, Dan, aren't you hoarding this stuff? Where's the line there?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I feel like a lot of a lot of folks listening could relate to that. Like, well, I have a storage unit that I pay every month, to keep all that stuff, or I have the guest room. Speaking for myself, we have a guest room, and it's not full to the brim, but it certainly has a lot of bookshelves with a lot of collectibles, and we have a lot of boxes with collectibles, and someone who isn't a collector may look at that and say, like, wow, why don't you use this room for for what it's supposed to be used
Right.
for? Have
A
guests
library.
come over. Exactly. A rec room or
Yes.
something. And I think, again, I tend to look at what is, rather than think about the numbers, how many things you have, or the duration, like, well, how long have you had this collection? I would think about things like, what is its impact on you? And it sounds to me like it's primarily positive, that you tend to put personal value. There's a lot of meaning in those items that you've collected. And while it might be a nuisance or an inconvenience is maybe a better word for another family member, like, hey, I kind of want to use that attic for putting my stuff in there.
Right.
It sounds like it doesn't take over your life, right? It doesn't become something that adds distress. Like when you're talking about your collection, and when you're talking about its personal meaning to you, it sounds like it doesn't cause you distress or anxiety to do so. Now,
no, it's just fun. It's just fun little memories. And also, to be fair, because I know she'll probably listen to this, Deanna has plenty of wonderful things in the attic, and much room for her to put whatever her little heart desires in there too.
It's a
See,
big
there's
attic.
still some space.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, and it's funny that you said that, Dre, about having a sentimental attachment to things, because I write a blog for Coffee with Kenobi, a monthly blog called The Caffeinated Collector, and most of the topics that I deal with are stories from my own collecting adventures and misadventures. And the one thing that I've sort of started honing in on and zeroing in on is only having things in my collection that I have a story to go along with.
Mm-hmm.
Either the story of how I obtained it, or who it came from, or what it means to me. And I think that not only does it help me keep my collection sort of at bay at a manageable sum total, but it also just makes it more interesting to me, because I can look at my shelf, and instead of seeing a bunch of objects, I see a lot of memories.
Yeah.
And
which is neat.
And that, you were talking about someone who is sort of obsessive as a collector, and I think most collectors have a little bit of that OCD gene, and I think that is what makes us, I say us, successful in other areas of our life. But is there something in the makeup of a person that is sort of an obsessive collector, that person who has to have every single thing on the shelf, whether it means something to them or not, and someone who is really just a casual collector, or someone who just, like yourself, who just sort of focuses on one character? Is there something in the makeup of that person, of those two people, that differentiates them psychologically, or is it just different from person to person?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up that there could be these differences, and the frank answer is that when it comes to the clinical problem of hoarding, whether it's Star Wars or something else. I mean, I've worked with a lot of patients who are challenged with hoarding disorder and OCD, and the types of things that somebody might collect within that mindset really range. It's surprising. So I will say that there certainly are there is a lot of research out there that shows that for that group of people who are living with hoarding disorder and who are in a lot of distress, as we talked about, related to that, there are neurobiological differences in their brain functioning. And although it's not exactly clear, like there hasn't necessarily been an exact genetic profile that has been identified or discovered, there's a lot of neuroimaging brain scan studies that do show, like, okay, folks with this really disabling type of hoarding problem, again, the folks that have difficulty functioning in the sense of their homes are filled with objects. Their family members are really worried about them. They are worried about themselves, but they can't necessarily let go. They cannot discard. That's kind of the cornerstone of the disorder. They have the inability to discard things. Yes, there has been evidence to show that there are some brain differences, and those brain differences actually will lead to an understanding that it's really about the decision making, this cognitive processing that happens with those folks where, you and I could sit here and be like, well, this newspaper is from the 80s. I don't need this. I don't have there's no value to this. I see no point in saving this. I'll toss it in the trash. Somebody else might look at that with, in the group that I'm referring to and say, I don't know, there may be some value to this. I have a lot of distress discarding this. I'm going to save it. So that sort of answer, I guess that gets to the idea that for folks who are suffering with this, yes, there have been some discoveries in the science to show that that decision-making process, that executive functioning, those cognitive abilities are deficits for folks like that. And that explains why they simply can't, quote unquote, just throw something away when the rest of us could. But I agree that there's this middle ground too. Like, what about folks that may not feel that distress, but are huge collectors and seem to just, acquire one thing after another, as soon as those things are made available, and will spend a lot of money to get there. And that is more of a gray area,
And that is where Jeff resides when left unchecked.
Right.
And I'd be careful to say, well, they're perfectly fine. I don't know. I think it's case by case. And as someone who is, friends with and colleagues with a lot of people who do have the tendency to collect a lot of things and to consider themselves collectors, I do think that it can be extreme. And I think that almost that lifestyle of being extreme, like being an extreme collector, I think that's kind of a high for them.
Yes, I could see that. And it's very, very much that mindset. There's that popular phrase, all things in moderation. You can peak out in certain areas and really have certain, like when Force Friday rolls around in September and they release the Force Awakens figures, I'm going to run out and get them. Now, if I don't have enough money for that and I need to put money towards something that takes care of my family, then the choice is clear. Right. But what we were saying is so true, and I think we've all walked in certain circles where we've seen evidence of that. I'd like to transition a little bit to the sort of gotta get them all mindset. And I was thinking about this question when I wrote it, of course, but as you were speaking, I remember at times I would be out on looking for something or just happening to see something, and I bought it and I brought it home and I went to put it away and I found that I already had it and I thought, what am I doing?
Oh, you're one of those.
I guess I am.
Dan.
Now, to be fair, it hasn't happened too often.
Dan, you're in good company. Every time my brother, there for about 3 years, every time I saw my brother, he would have, quote unquote, bought me a new CD.
Yeah.
And what really happened is he had several thousand CDs and he would buy one and not realizing he already had it. So instead of returning it, it was, I'll just give it to my brother.
Well,
so you're in good company there.
Well, thank you. And to be fair, I mean, it was something like, I bought Chewbacca and I came home and it was like the 8th Chewbacca I had because this one has earmuffs and this one comes with a rifle. And
so you weren't buying the exact same Chewbacca.
Oh. No,
well,
no.
Realizing it.
You're buying.
But I still thought I gotta cut the cord here a little bit and just sort of refocus. But the gotta get them all mindset is very real. I think the new top Star Wars trading app has helped perpetuate this a little bit. What are your thoughts on that idea?
Well, it's funny because I think that we've also been talking about the consumer aspect of this, and that I think Star Wars fans are incredibly loyal, and some of us have money in our pockets that we're willing to spend on Star Wars stuff. So I think, harkening back to the late 70s, early 80s, some of this has been, at least for Star Wars fans, that's kind of been, those are our lives. Like, we have experienced these waves of being consumers of Star Wars things. And I think that Lucasfilm has been incredibly successful and brilliant in the way that it will release some of the toys to us and make announcements and build this community. And we are a strong community, and we're also, and I say this with in a heartfelt way, we're a community of stuff. We relate to each other with which action figures do you have, and what are you collecting? Are you collecting Sideshow stuff or Gentle Giant stuff? And I think that the idea of, well, I have to have each one, or I have to have everything, at least with the Star Wars universe, is there's this almost like impossibility about it. It is kind of like the universe in the sense that, can you really have everything? I think at this point, you can't. I think some of us sort of feel like we are going to do everything we can to acquire everything because we're so personally dedicated and devoted to this fandom. And every time we acquire something, we sort of feel even more immersed. We feel even more a part of it. And I say that with a lot of positivity. Like I'm including myself in that sentiment. And I even will meet people who will create, or they have these Excel spreadsheets or databases where when they acquire something, they'll log it into their, I don't know if I'm giving you ideas or.
No, actually,
these are all things I've already thought of.
Okay.
I did that, and then I met my wife, and my priorities changed, but for the better.
The closest thing I have right now is just I have a want list of items that I would like to acquire at some point, and it's mostly vintage stuff from the 80s. That's sort of how I've reined in my collection. Is I've said, okay, I'm not going to buy anything that was made after 1985.
Yeah.
Unless it's really cool.
Right.
Well, which is hard. And Dre, when you were speaking about that, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I know for a fact that this whole get 'em all mentality, once you start getting what you want, you come home with it and you look at it and you just feel empty, like, well, I still need to get this. That's when I think you've got a problem.
And that's where I was going with the law of diminishing returns earlier.
Really good point. So once a person starts to experience, that feeling not of fulfillment or satisfaction or personal meaning, like we've been talking about, if you just start to feel almost immediate distress and need for the next item, then it's not about the items themselves, right? It becomes about a game. It becomes about the acquisition of things. And then I would say it doesn't really matter what the thing is, whether it's Star Wars or, Batman or Star Trek or whatever. It's now this process of acquiring that thing. And
filling a hole that it can't be filled.
Right.
Not with stuff.
And that's where I think that's where I keyed in on the idea of it being like a low-level addiction. And the reason I go to that is Jason Mewes, who played Jay in the Kevin Smith movies, talked at length on a series of podcasts about his battle with addiction. It was very affecting. But he talked about the fact that the actual act of getting high was not what he looked forward to. It was seeking out the drugs. The drug seeking itself was what he enjoyed, that chase. And that made me really think about myself. And I was at the point at that time where I was noticing that I'll get this and then I'll get it and I'll be like, okay, well, it's on the shelf now. There's nothing. What else can I go after? And that's where I kind of had to say, okay, this is getting to be a problem and I need to back off and figure out why is it that I'm collecting what I'm collecting. And that's where I hit upon the idea of making sure I had a story to tell.
Who knew this would end up being a group therapy session for us?
I did absolutely. Is there some? I have two questions for you. The first is there something to be said for holding off on getting everything that's on your list? Sort of like was it Napoleon that wept for there were no worlds left to conquer?
You mean delayed gratification, that kind of thing?
Not so much delayed gratification, but just realizing that as long as you don't complete your journey, there's still a journey to be had. Does that?
It makes sense. Yeah, like what is your next goal? What is you don't want to be Captain Ahab looking for the white whale because there's no satisfaction, there's no payoff, and it's fruitless.
Yeah, and I think that kind of gets at the root at what it is that's fulfilling to you. Is it having the items? And for some people, it's not necessarily having the items. It's relating to the items because they're full of meaning and memories. Most of us, I mean, I'll admit, for most of us, we look at those action figures and those are memories for us.
Yes,
exactly.
And I would agree that if there could be an end point, like let's say there is this, master checklist and you checked everything off of that list, or you have your own personal checklist and you've acquired everything, is there really fulfillment? Like, do you really feel this enjoyment about that? And I think it depends on the type of collector, and I think it depends on the mindset of each collector. But my guess is that it's not so much about, checking everything off or having everything as it is the journey getting there and the feelings you have when you're acquiring the things that we're collecting. And I think for Star Wars in particular, a lot of it has to do with the community. When we go to, when I was at Celebration, for instance, of course, we were just surrounded by all of these action figures and toys and collectibles. As soon as I saw that toaster that could make the Vader toast.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I kind of knew that existed. I didn't know you could buy it. But once I saw it, I was like, I need to own this. Everyone in my life is going to see this and tell me I need to own it. And I have this urge. I don't care how much it is. I need to own this toaster. Now, ultimately, I didn't buy it. And I think it has to do with the idea that I know it exists. I know it's out there. And I had such a great experience, seeing it in person and getting to like play with it and stuff. And again, just being around people like me who were so excited about it. And I think that's what a lot of the excitement is being around people, fans in the community and, having that experience together. There's an action figure and there's one of 50 of these. Who got that one? Who was able to get that one? Or can we trade? Or, oh man, you got it. I feel happy for you. And that I think those feelings are universal. Those are the feelings of, we had similar experiences when we were growing up, and these are remnants of those memories. And I think without actually physically grasping them and having them in our homes, we can still have those shared experiences. Now, if you fall into the other category where you have to wake up every morning and see it inside of your house, or you don't feel happy, that's like we're talking about that, then that gets to that extreme type of collector's mindset. And I don't think there are a ton of people like that. I think that ultimately most collectors will really get, some of these feelings of satisfaction and fulfillment from the experience of knowing that these things exist and for having those dreams and wish lists that maybe one day I'll have it, but I don't have to have it today.
You're absolutely right, and I think you are correct that the so-called super collectors are few and far between. You mentioned those feelings of nostalgia and that feeling of community. Are there some psychological benefits to being a collector that we all enjoy that maybe people don't always think about when they think about people who do consider themselves collectors?
And I'm going to take notes so I can go up and tell Deanna this.
Well, I mean, there certainly are experiences we have as collectors that bring us joy, and I think some of that is going to visit a friend or someone you've met and seeing their collection, and
my story of going to get Star Wars toothbrushes with my boys. I mean, that was a great memory. It had nothing to do with the toothbrushes.
And all the stories that I have about, my mother and Taylor and I, my best friend Taylor and I, who go on toy runs all the time. So yeah, I get that completely. Yeah,
I think it's that shared experience of, oh, you collect the same thing that I do, or oh, you maybe it's not even the same type of collection, but you're a fan of something, and I can relate to that. And I think, ultimately, again, it comes down to just having that connectedness, that relatability. Someone else is deeply passionate about something in the same way that I am, and maybe we have the same kinds of, hobbies. Maybe we're into the same kinds of things. And I'm speaking a lot about younger folks too, that, well, I'll ask you guys, certainly when I was growing up, I had collections, and I wasn't sure if other kids had similar collections. Did you experience, growing up, were you able to find other kids that had collections like you did?
Nope. I grew up in a small town, Paris, Texas, second largest Paris in the world, and I was the only kid who had an extensive collection of anything. The rest of my friends, they had baseball cards and things like that, but I was the only one who was really, sort of obsessive about it. Was really into making sure I had a complete set of something, and I think that's why I feel the way that I do about being a collector. That it is something that makes me unique, and again, thankfully, it's not as unique as I thought, because it does make me a part of a community. But yeah, growing up, I definitely did not have that same sense of community.
Well, I think it would be interesting if I took me as a little boy, as a young man, as an adolescent, and I had Facebook or Twitter, and I could reach out and see, there are people that have collections like mine. StarWars.com is featuring collectors. I didn't have that, but I will say that a lot of my friends had collections, and interestingly, some of my strongest memories of adapting when I would change to a new school would be because someone that I met had a Return of the Jedi notebook, or someone had brought in a Gamorrean guard one day, and so I felt that instant kinship with that person. Yeah. Now, to be fair, it was the same as if somebody wore a Chicago Cubs baseball hat. You know what I mean? It was just one of those things that hit those right notes for me. But interestingly enough, and this is probably more about going through puberty than anything, when I was a freshman, I was buying an action figure, and I saw a girl from my school, and I about jumped, out of the mall. I was so worried that she would see me buying an action figure, which, of course, nowadays when I teach my students, that's not a big deal at all. But at that time,
right.
Boys will, being a teenager is tough.
So what happened?
With that figure? I bought it.
I was going to say with that girl.
Oh, nothing. She just ignored me, which was fine.
I love you got the figure anyway.
I did. I still have it, actually.
Well, now you have a great story about it.
See, there you go. And now millions of people can listen and enjoy.
Yeah, I think, I have when I was growing up, I had friends, but we didn't really have the same types of collections. And I do remember, when I became, you guys know Amy Ratcliffe, who writes for StarWars.com.
Yeah, she's on a bunch of times.
When we had become friends and she moved to LA, one of the first things that we kind of bonded over was our Star Wars action figure collections and kind of, going to each other's houses and checking out, like, what do you have? What are you looking for? What's out there right now? And it becomes this wonderful kind of platform to just start to bond over and to build a friendship on. And, and so I think, yeah, of course, to answer your question, there's a lot of positive stuff that can happen interpersonally and socially when it comes to collectibles. And I think that the question you have is really important, because I think there's this assumption that a collector is like
the comic book guy from The Simpsons.
Yeah, someone who's kind of isolated and who has no friends, the loner. And from my experience, Star Wars collectors are very involved with each other and have a lot of communication, whether over social media or in person. And that's a huge part. Again, that's a huge part of the community.
But so it's almost a requirement, really. If you're going to collect anything, it's almost a requirement to have those connections.
Right. Yeah. So I think there can be a lot of positive aspects about the collection. And now that we've had Star Wars for so long, that intergenerational bonding that can happen is, as you know, Dan, it's incredibly educational and can be very inspiring for young folks.
Oh, very, very, very much so. And just showing that, there are commonalities. We have a lot of things that make us different, but they have a lot of things also that unite us to one another. And just start conversations. People who start becoming friends and communicating. You and Amy, however you two started talking and hanging out, I can just about guarantee that your conversations are about Star Wars, but they're also about myriad other things. It's just one of those little things that brings people together.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, when we first started hanging out, it was just about Star Wars.
Nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. We realize there's so much more to talk about, and I think that's another assumption. This show could be about breaking these myths and assumptions about people who collect. Like, it's not all we talk about. We talk about, do other things. So yeah, that's another important aspect.
Well, we, Amy and I and Cory hung out at Indiana Comic-Con a few months ago, and one of the first things we noticed when we were talking to Amy is she had that cool custom Star Wars jewelry that she makes. She had a Millennium Falcon ring, and anyway, that's sort of a random thing. But Amy, hats off to you, my friend. Good stuff. We're talking a lot about nostalgia and collecting, and how much of collecting do you say is nostalgic, and why is that a healthy, positive attribute? Because I'm hoping that when people hear this, they will understand that we are all collectors. We all love Star Wars, and we understand that there's a lot that goes into it. But it's overall, I would say 99% of collecting is a very positive thing. So let's talk about some of the more positive attributes that we haven't already discussed.
Yeah, as far as nostalgia, certainly a single action figure or toy can bring us back to our childhood. And there's something very, very kind of pure and innocent about the first experiences we had with Star Wars. Now, certainly some of us had those experiences later in life, but a lot of times the toys or the action figures that we really covet are ones that have that personal meaning. And it's funny because I found that the ones that I have that may have a lot of personal meaning and have that, heavy nostalgia attribute may be worth really very, very little when it comes to like the dollar value. And the stuff that I have that, I don't know, might be worth a lot of money, may not have that aspect, I don't know. Do you find that to be true?
For me, absolutely.
Definitely.
And I think that speaks to when we say something has value as collectors, when we say something has value, we don't necessarily mean monetary value. Sometimes it's that personal value. It's that meaning that it has. And of course, there's that flip side to that if those memories bring you back to a place that you can't get out of, and I would say sadness or something traumatic, then that flip side of that coin is that's when you want to be able to move past it and discover a different meaning for that object. And I'm speaking for those folks who might be listening and thinking like, well, the thing that brings me back a lot is also one that makes me quite sad because I lost someone during that time, or because that's the last time I could really afford to have the luxury of being a real fan in terms of a collector or what have you. So I will acknowledge that could happen as well. But for the most part, the reason we're holding on to some of these items is that aspect of nostalgia and the aspect of bringing it back to a time and a place where we were really, really connected to that fandom, to that particular narrative or story. Now, for me, that would really have to do with the original action figures from the early 80s, because when I was a kid, I actually would play with those action figures, and I hadn't even seen the movie yet. Does that make sense? Like I was actually going to play with the toys, and my sister and I would play with these toys, and we would kind of carry them around. And we had other things like dolls and Barbies and things like that. But we kind of bonded over having these little action figures, and we had nicknames for them. They weren't even the real names of these characters. And then as I grew older, I realized those were Star Wars toys that we were playing with and bonding over. And now, I mean, those are some of the most meaningful toys to me.
That's so cool.
The same. I have a lot of the same.
Yeah, Jeff and I are the same. I first played with C-3PO and Luke Skywalker before I'd even seen the movie.
Mine was C-3PO, but it was after I'd seen the movie. I'm pretty sure, at least. I don't really remember.
So do you hold on? I have a question. You know the little plastic R2, the original.
Oh yeah.
Little R2 figure. Mm-hmm. Have you held on to that? Because that for me, like now, is just a little capsule. Like it's barely holding on.
The stickers falling off.
I still have every. I still have every one of the original toys that I had when I was a kid. My mom saved them all, saved the boxes for the vehicles and everything.
Wow, smart.
I don't have the boxes, but I have all the figures.
I have the boxes for about probably a third to a half of the vehicles. She saved them because that was how we stored them in the storeroom.
Great.
Was in the boxes.
Smart.
My mom.
Yeah, they all have that. Yeah, she was. That your mom and mine were very similar. Maybe we're separated at birth, although I doubt it. Yeah, it's
My
really
dad
fun.
would have had some explaining to do.
Yeah, this is it's a wonderful topic. We could easily have you on to talk about this so much more. I mean, I'm sure just this conversation alone, as we said earlier, is triggering a lot of stuff in people's minds. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and passion about this topic with us. You really were the perfect guest for this, for sure.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. And, again, as a Star Wars fan and collector, I just feel like I'm sitting around having coffee with you guys and just chatting about our collections.
That's cool. I still can't believe we must have just probably passed each other 1,000 times at Celebration.
Oh, I'm so bummed we didn't
yeah.
actually get to talk.
It's crazy. Well, there'll be others, I'm sure. And speaking of others, you've got so many wonderful things going on. We talked about your TED Talks. We know the great work you're doing. And Jeff, did you know that you were actually speaking with a canonical character from the Batman comics right now?
Yes.
You did know that?
No, not at all.
Yeah, Andrea's...
It's my little secret.
Yeah, that's not so much a secret. Tell us about what's going on with the Arkham Sessions.
Yeah. So the Arkham Sessions is a weekly podcast. I'm one of the co-hosts, and the other co-host, Brian Ward,
Who's hilarious and smart.
He's like he's so great. So it's set up where a psychologist and then a fan, a normal person, will talk about Batman the Animated Series, and he is sort of each episode is him interviewing me about the psychology of each episode of the animated series. And rather than say it's a review of each episode, because that's been done before. I mean, I think a lot of people have covered that in blogs and in podcasts before. This is about the psychological science of each episode in kind of a discussion format where we talk about anything from psychological disorders to memory to sleep dysfunction to head trauma to medical issues, hypnosis. One of my most recent favorite episodes was about the psychology of magic, because Zatanna was one of the was in one of the episodes. So we talked about what happens in the brain when we see a magic trick and we're wowed by it. Like you have that moment of, okay, I see something, and then suddenly my brain can't register what my eyes just saw because that was impossible. There's actually a lot of science behind that process. And so that's an example of where we'll take a character like Zatanna from the animated series and we'll talk about the psychological science of magic.
I'm glad the podcast is free so I don't have to say, shut up and take my money. That sounds fascinating. That sounds endlessly fascinating.
Oh, Jeff, this is, I mean, like I said, and I wasn't just saying it, not like Warner Brothers is paying me, but that is the greatest animated show. I remember, speaking of psychology, I remember after seeing Batman Returns being so depressed. And then the first episode of Batman the Animated Series came on and I instantly felt better. So
that's great. That's a great story.
It's so true. I could go on and on. We could easily be having biscuits with Batman instead of coffee with Kenobi.
I love it. We need to do that.
That would be fun. That'd be super fun. But yeah, that is a tremendous thing. And you two have such a great spin on it. And I've been an unabashed fan since the beginning of the Arkham Session. So it's always cool to hear you talk Batman.
Thank you. Yeah, the Arkham Sessions is so much fun. And
it's grown a lot, too.
Yeah, it's definitely, we've been able to take it to conventions. We were hosted by Fanboy Comics, so it's really nice to have a platform and a team to endorse us and to promote us. We certainly, our goal is just to increase, listeners, just to increase public awareness about psychological science, and Batman for me is the way that I do that. So it's been a ton of fun.
Outstanding. Well, Drea, where can our listeners get in touch with you if they'd like to connect or hear your outstanding podcast?
So my podcast is on my website, underthemaskonline.com. And I have a bunch of posts on there. And every week we'll post the podcast. I'm also on Twitter at Arkham Asylum Doc, very fittingly. So I was going to say, if folks had any questions about our conversation, they should definitely reach out and chat with us that way. And of course, Fanboy Comics, which is, I believe, at Fanboy Comics.
That sounds right. I'll put it on the show notes. I'll look it up, put it on the show notes.
Thank you.
Sure.
And it's I paused because it's COMIX, which is a little bit of a different spelling for comics, and of course their website fanboycomics.org.
Like boys, BOYZ.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, so I had to make sure I said the right spelling for them.
Sure. No problem. Well, Drea, thank you again so much for coming back to Coffee with Kenobi. We certainly look forward to chatting with you in the future.
I'd love to. Thanks for having me.
More to add, do you?
So Rob Irwin sent in an awesome MP3 about this, and we loved his MP3 for the show 39 on Star Wars music. So take a listen, and we're going to have more discussion with Rob.
Hey there guys, Rob from Who Wars here. You know, the topic of collecting is such an interesting subject to get into, and an aspect of it that I find myself thinking about more and more, particularly as I age, is what's going to happen to some of these big collections that are currently out there, and maybe not even the big collections, some of the smaller collections too, because when you think about it, a lot of Star Wars fans might be single or in family groups where the other family members don't really share the passion, don't really understand what the collectibles are worth. I mean, if I even think of my collection here, as meagre as it is in comparison to some that are out there, my wife, who is a Star Wars fan and understands collectibles to some degree, even she wouldn't know what to price some of the items in this collection. And I can only imagine that's replicated on a grander scale with some of the collections out there. So, morbid as this might be to discuss, what's going to happen when collectors who are currently 50, 60, 70 years old, people who are the vanguard of collecting, not just Star Wars, but pop culture items in general, what's going to happen as they start to pass away in the future? Are we going to see them perhaps sell up before they do? Or are we going to see family members selling things that are worth hundreds of dollars for ridiculous prices at garage sales because they just don't know any better? I don't know. I think it's going to become a topic that's more relevant and prevalent in the decades ahead. I'd love to hear your take. Cheers, guys.
First off, let me say, Rob, you have the greatest accent on the planet.
Right? He totally does.
Really does. And this is actually a topic that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Everybody knows, well, not everybody knows, but most people know I don't have kids. I don't plan on having any children of my own. Not to say that I won't ever have any won't ever help raise anybody, but I have no children of my own. So I've been thinking a lot about, what am I going to do? What happens to my collection when I'm gone? And not that my collection is worth or will ever be worth a terrible amount of money. It's mostly items that mean something to me. But
you've got a great collection.
I do, but it's not, it's not a super collection or anything like that.
You're a tremendous slouch.
Thank you. Thank you, Ty. But I was talking, my best friend Taylor just had a baby boy named Elijah, and Taylor's plan is to get him a set of the original 12 Star Wars figures of his very own. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I said, you know what, I'm thinking maybe I'm just going to start bequeathing when Elijah, his son, gets old enough. I'm going to start bequeathing some of my toys to him. When he gets old enough to A, appreciate them, B, play with them, and C, some of them maybe when he gets old enough to take care of them. Because I think the phrase that I used was, because what else am I going to do with them? Mm-hmm. And I think this is something that people need to start thinking about, because our generation, I feel like, is the first one that's really had a connection to pop culture. I feel like maybe my brother's generation. He's several years older than me.
I mean, baby boomers will probably disagree with you.
Well, maybe, but you don't see a baby boomer with. Well, I suppose, yeah, they just had their own set of things to collect.
The Beatles or Matchbox Cars or.
But a lot of that stuff they've already have already done away with, or things like that. Who knows? But it is something that every collector needs to start thinking about. Have you given any thought? I'm assuming you're going to pass yours on to your kids.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was actually thinking about this recently. I was looking at a lot of the stuff that I have, and I thought, what's going to happen to this stuff someday? Rob's email was so poignant or MP3 was so poignant because I thought, what if somebody tries to sell it and they don't sell it to a good home? I was sort of having an Andy from Toy Story moment, which I think was one of the reasons why Toy Story 3 was so powerful too.
I bawled my eyes out.
Oh, I did too. In fact, when it was over, I had to sit there and compose myself. It's true. So you want that, but if I instill in my sons a love of Star Wars that I have, and they want the collection, it's theirs. But other than that, I guess if it was to be sold, you'd hope it would go towards something important, like college or a house payment, or not just waste it on like cheeseburgers or something horrible.
Hey.
Not your Star Wars collection. Like when I the only thing that
no,
made
just
me feel
the
okay
thought of
with,
anything being wasted on a cheeseburger.
Well,
nothing's ever wasted if it's in service of a cheeseburger.
Well, it is if it's your Star Wars collection. When I pulled the trigger on the Lenovo Stormtrooper armor, I sold some Star Wars stuff, and I had the money in my hands. I'm like, it was so hard to get some of this stuff and collect it. If I'm going to earn money for this, I'm going to put it back towards the collection.
Right.
Which is what I did.
And I think if I look at my collection, I think it's probably about half and half. There's about half of the items that I would probably want sold or want to sell. I'm thinking specifically of my Jumbo Gentle Giant collection because I love it, but it holds. It doesn't hold as much sentimental value to me as a lot of the older toys that I have from my collection.
Right.
And I just feel like I'm going to eventually start passing them on to other people because it's not going to do me any good when I'm gone, and I may as well have the satisfaction and the joy of seeing them bring satisfaction and joy to other people.
Yes, you want to go to a good home.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Rob. That was, as promised, very compelling, and there's definitely some darkness to it, but in a good way. I think it's an important thing to sort of talk about. It actually ties in quite well with our discussion with Drea. Our topic for show number 41 is the current state of canon in Star Wars. After almost 2 years of new canonical Star Wars, how is storytelling faring in Star Wars? What stories have been the most rewarding, and what makes a good Star Wars story? Are there any out there that need to be told? What will be better left ambiguous? Joining us on this topic will be the Full of Sith team. Join us for part 2 of this epic crossover. We'll have part 1 on their show, and then join us here for part 2. In 300 words or less, be sure to send us an email or an MP3 with your thoughts, comments, questions, and opinions to feedback@coffeewithkenobi.com.
I like the sound of that.
Echo 3 to Echo 7. Ano, buddy, you read me?
I saw part of the message.
I seem to have found it.
Our first email comes from Catherine, and she writes, "Hi, Dan and Corey. I noticed that you folks have an eye for cool Star Wars news and pop culture, and I thought you might be excited about this visual guide to the amount of power that goes into every piece of Star Wars tech. It's insanely, maybe obsessively, detailed. We get a real live physicist to help with the calculations. I also think it's just cool to look at. Here's a link to the original post if you want to take a look." And I will put that in the show notes, of course. And she also says, if you like the infographic, you're more than willing to share it with your readers. It was just posted on CNET, and their fans are loving it. And if you have any feedback or questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to hear from you. And that was from Catherine Hempstead. And Catherine, thank you. This is really, really cool.
I love this. I love stuff like this.
It's more like Star Trek-y as far as finding like the science of something. I'm more of the mythology aspect of it. But it is fascinating, nevertheless. I think that, I don't know, what part do you like the best?
I just love the fact that you can sort of quantify it with real world, with a real world idea of how much power these things consume. It's a lot like, I don't know if you saw floating around Facebook last week, there was a thing about the relative speed of science fiction spaceships.
No.
In real world terms. And of course the Millennium Falcon was like almost at the top of the list. And it started with everything, from, I can't even remember what the first one was, but it was something from an old, like the old Star Trek series, and went all, included everything from Battlestar Galactica. Of course, the TARDIS was at the top of the list because it was, its speed was just infinity.
Hard to beat.
Right. But yeah, I just love stuff like this. I love that when you're able to actually quantify and put it in a real world terms to give you an idea of just how massive some of these machines are and how much juice that they actually do consume.
Impressive, Catherine. Most impressive. Thank you for sending that in. And everyone else, check out the link in the show notes and let us know what you think.
Our next email comes from Cayenne Royalty, who I understand is a former student of Dan's.
Hey.
He says, "Hello, friends. I haven't tuned in for a while, but rest assured I'm still alive and decided it was time to listen to another episode and weigh in. I just finished listening to your amazing and quite interesting analysis of Revenge of the Sith. I have so many thoughts after hearing this episode, but in the interest of keeping things short, I will only share a couple. I am part of the generation that grew up with the prequels. As was noted, this generation tends to favor the prequels a lot more than the older generation that grew up with the originals. Personally, I put Revenge of the Sith in slot number 1. It is my favorite of all the Star Wars films for many reasons, including that it is dark, atmospheric, powerful, and emotional, to name but a few. I do believe that Anakin's fall was very plausible if we think about his feelings and actions leading up to this point. He is very conflicted between his own personal emotions and the mostly emotionless teachings of the Jedi. He is grieved over the loss of his mother to the point where he slaughters the entire tribe of Sand People. He's also afraid that he will lose Padme, his one love in the galaxy. Up to his fall, he is killed a couple of times. However, I believe that these actions can be justified. First of all, he slaughtered the band of Sand People. This can be loosely justified by the fact that the Sand People are widely viewed as monsters, and most would possibly even congratulate him for ridding Tatooine of at least a small part of the menace. The next time we see him kill is when he kills Dooku. This can be justified by the fact that Dooku is a Sith and a very large threat to the galaxy, not to mention the leader of the Separatist forces in the war. He took the order from Palpatine, but at the time he did not realize that Palpatine was the Sith Lord working behind the scenes. By the time he confronts Windu, he fully knows without a doubt that Palpatine is Darth Sidious. However, despite this, he has been reeled in and believes that he needs Palpatine and willingly sides with him. Immediately following, he partakes in full-on assisted murder. In my mind, there's no coming back from that. This was the point where he finally went over the edge. In closing, I have a quick thought about the music of Star Wars for your next show's topic. Music in film has the role of supporting the scenes by helping portray emotions that are felt at the time. It is this role that Williams executes to perfection. The way the music lines up and very accurately portrays the atmosphere and mood of the scene is phenomenal. As an example, I will give my two favorite pieces, the Duel of the Fates in The Phantom Menace and the Battle of the Heroes in Revenge of the Sith. Not only are these two pieces very exciting and pleasing to listen to on their own, but they also do an amazing job of reflecting what is happening. The climax of Duel of the Fates matches up with what I believe to be the climax of the battle, which is when Qui-Gon is killed by Darth Maul. It reflects the shock and sadness that Obi-Wan feels and follows up with his anger towards Maul. In the Battle of the Heroes, the exact same thing happens. The climax of the song matches up with what I see as the climax of the battle, which is when Obi-Wan and Anakin lock sabers as a volcano erupts in the background. Again, the music portrays the feelings of the two men fighting, the sadness in Obi-Wan for losing his best friend to the dark side, and the hatred Anakin feels toward Obi-Wan. Overall, Williams does a spectacular job in portraying the emotions of the scenes, and I believe this is what sets his music apart from other composers' works. Keep up the good work, guys. It's really cool seeing how far you've come since your first show, and I can't wait to see how far you go in the future. Keep being awesome. And Kyan, we will.
Kyan, thank you, Ed. Kyan was on our show, Jeff, way back in the beginning. He was on the show where we talked about the expanded universe. This was before it became Legends or even knew that was going to happen. So it's cool to hear from you, Kyan. I'm glad you're still in the Star Wars, which I knew you would be. And I like your thoughts about Revenge of the Sith. Very much mirrors what you and I and Scott talked about.
Yes, he makes some very good points there, and I do have to agree with a couple of them. And it's funny just how I realize how little connection I do have to the prequels, because Duel of the Fates I know, from the moment you say it, I can hear the music in my head. Mm-hmm. But the Battle of the Heroes, I'm going to have to go back and listen to really hear again, because when I'm watching that battle, I'm so caught up in the visuals. The music is not. I don't even remember hearing it.
You know what? I can't even carry a tune even with my iPhone in my hands. But it's just that you recognize when you hear it's like that, da 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 da, and then it's da 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 da. You know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea, but I want you to keep singing because that's nice.
That's bad, isn't it? Oh well, I don't care. I have other talents in other areas, so it's a wonderful piece of music. It's I would say, I don't know if it's better than Duel of the Fates, but it's as good.
Yeah, Duel of the Fates is it's right up there with it's right up there with the Imperial March and the main fanfare to me.
Yeah. Well, when you what might be kind of cool, and listeners should do this too, is rewatch that scene, but just take the sample of me singing it, and then actually don't do that. It'll ruin the whole movie for you.
Oh, you totally should. The Dan Zare supercut.
Our next email is actually a couple of messages we got on Twitter from Andre Hutchins. I'm sorry, Andre. And he wrote some cool stuff. He said, "One of the things that you two have helped me do is gain a better appreciation for the prequel movies. I blame those movies for making me fall out of love with Star Wars and slowly lost interest over the years. However, I'm tempted to go back and watch the movies focusing on the stories and characters and not the acting and CGI. It's made a world of difference. This new appreciation led me to watching the Clone Wars TV series. In Season 3, Episode 15, Overlords, I felt like this episode dove deep into Anakin's life story more than any other previous episode. But I didn't understand it. This episode threw so many new ideas of what the Force is or could be in Force users, Sith or Jedi, and how little they all actually understand. I was hoping you might have insight to the episode and what it might mean for the Star Wars story itself." Well, that is an excellent question. It's really cool, by the way, Andre, that we helped you get more of an appreciation for the prequels. We're trying to do that with our buddy Jeff here.
You know what? I know I do appreciate the prequels. I have more of an appreciation than most people would think. But I will never enjoy them as much as the original trilogy. But there is something to be said about them, and for younger fans, I certainly understand why they are drawn to them. I'm trying to remember the episode he's talking about.
Me too, Overlords. I should have like kind of skimmed it again before we did the show, so I apologize, Andre. I will look into it and send you a message back because I love Clone Wars. I think it's terrific. I've often said it breathed life into Star Wars in a way that the prequels didn't necessarily do at every point. So that was cool. He also sent me a link about this controversy over the Slave Leia figure.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, I want to hear what you think about this.
Yeah, I won't say it's much ado about nothing, because I will admit that if you're walking down the aisle and you haven't seen it sitting on the shelf for the last year and a half, that it could be a little off-putting. But at the same time, as everyone said, this is not the first Slave Leia figure that we've had on shelves. We had one almost 20 years ago in the Power of the Force line. Power of the Force 2 line, rather.
Right.
And
which was a big seller. I don't remember there being a stink about it, but then again, there was no Twitter or Facebook then either.
Exactly. I think this is just a result of social media and somebody realizing, hey, I can make a stink about this. And, I hate to say it just seems like somebody desperate for attention, but that's kind of what it felt like to me.
It's tricky. It's a slippery slope. I mean, I don't have daughters. I have 3 boys. But I do know it's important for them to understand respect for women. You treat your mom with respect, you treat your girlfriend, your friend with respect, and that translates to what kind of character you're going to have. And, I'm not saying if you buy one, heck, I have the original Power of the Force Slave Leia figure. I didn't buy the Black Series 6-inch one, and it wasn't because of any personal stance. It was because I didn't like how the figure looked. It wasn't a good figure. That, like the elbows and the joints, I just thought it looked plasticky, and it just didn't look like.
Which is why he saw it on shelves.
Exactly. So, I mean, I guess it's a slippery slope, and we understand that there are different, ways to look at this. As far as you could see that symbol, the metal bikini, as a symbol of enslavement and sexism, or you could also you look at it as empowerment because she uses that through subterfuge to take out Jabba, basically. So, again, that it could be a whole show.
The only way that this thing is upsetting to someone is if you don't know Star Wars.
Right. And then they have a valid point.
Right.
It's valid. I mean, is it the most important thing going on in the universe? I don't think so.
No.
But, right on.
Again, go down the pink aisle with all the Barbie dolls and tell me that's not just as or more offensive.
Very good point.
By the way, Overlords is the first part of the Mortis trilogy, which is what I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
So, yes.
Okay. Now I do know what he's talking about perfectly. Yeah, that whole arc takes the Force in a whole different ways, and it very much ties into the end of the Yoda arc in Season 6 too. So, Andre, I've actually often thought about looking back at all the different Clone Wars. That would take forever, and Cory and Jeff might go running for the hills if I decided to do that. But there are certainly moments in that. I mean, we did a couple of Clone Wars for all of Season 6, but there are so many poignant, powerful moments in that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I will rewatch Overlords. I've been wanting to rewatch Mortis anyway, so this will be a good reason to do so. Our next email says, Dear Dan Z, as a Star Wars fan and blogger myself, I enjoyed discovering your blog, Coffee with Kenobi. I'm going to have to pick up a copy of Star Wars number 7. There's a comics and collectibles shop on the corner of my block. Kind of dangerous for a speculative fiction geek. Obi-Wan is my favorite Jedi for many reasons, and I love Ewan McGregor's portrayal of him. The pages you shared are beautifully done. I work for the Store Local Corporation, a self-storage co-op company, and write for the blog The Renter's Bent at storagefront.com. We like to get creative on The Renter's Bent, so since I'm a big sci-fi and fantasy buff, sometimes my articles blend self-storage with those genres. I have 2 such blogs up so far, and I think you'll really enjoy my post about how one might secure a self-storage business on Tatooine. I write these articles more to entertain than to get people to rent storage units, but of course, we hope that people enjoy the articles, then learn more about the company. My Facebook posts announcing the articles have received some great comments, plus many likes and shares. Since you run a popular Star Wars blog, I think you'd enjoy reading the Tatooine article. If you like it enough to link it and maybe mention it, that would be awesome. It's not often you read something about an everyday aspect of life in the Star Wars universe. Your readers might enjoy it too. Funny enough, I place it around the time of A New Hope. Please let me know if you share this and I'll find a way to share your blog as well. You can read my post, Protect Your Self-Storage Business Like a Hut, Self-Secure Storage on Tatooine here, and he has a link which we'll provide in the show notes. And this is from Jonathan Fessmeyer. He says, may the force be with you. And thank you, Jonathan. It sounds very engaging. It actually reminds me of the J. Peterman catalog.
Yeah.
You know, where
Yes.
it's got fiction, but it's also trying to tell you something or promote something cool. So this is fun. I love when we run into listeners and readers from our stuff. And this is, of course, the only reason this even happened was because of something that Matt Moore published about the new Star Wars, which, of course, you are no stranger to Mr. Matt Moore.
Right, yeah, I've heard that name before. And I'm always a sucker for stuff like this, even something as mundane as how would the self-storage business work in the Star Wars universe. When I had Ryder Waldron on Bantha Banter,
which was great.
I'm sorry, Ryder Waldron DDS, I've committed to referring to him by his full title from now on. One of the things we talked about was dental hygiene, who had the best teeth in the galaxy far, far away. And I mentioned to him that on his podcast, Idiots Array, I really hope that he's able to talk them into letting him do a Star Wars hygiene podcast at the end of each episode. I would love to have a segment about dental hygiene in the galaxy. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just enough of a nerd, but stuff like that is just hilarious and so interesting to me. So I look forward to taking a look at this blog.
By the way, that was one of my my favorite episodes, and not just because I'm such a big Ryder fan anyway, but you guys have good chemistry together. Too.
He's a good interview. He's a good guy,
He's a cool
and
guy.
I really enjoy his contributions to the Idiots Array as well. So if anybody out there hasn't checked that out yet, please do yourself a favor and go check that out because it's a lot of fun as well. They've got some great information about keeping canon straight in the Star Wars universe.
Which is very, very important. It would be great if maybe someday we'll get to be on their show. That'd be
I
fun.
think so. I think he's already said he wants to have at least the three of us on separately. I don't know if he wants to try to get everybody on together, but
oh man, I would feel bad. Nobody get a word in edgewise.
No kidding, especially nobody from their show. Speaking of getting a word in edgewise, our last email is very short and sweet from a listener, Fraser Robertson, and Fraser says, "Hi Dan and Cory and Jeff." I added that last part. With a new Star Wars film coming out in December, which has a sort of 1977 feeling, it's going to be great to see the original Big Three again on the big screen. I hope in the new trilogy of films we see some old and new faces. Brilliant podcast. Keep up the good work. And again, that's from Fraser Robertson. Fraser, thank you for writing in. I'm right there with you. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the old faces along with some of the new. And it looks like, based on what we've seen, they're all going to blend together just perfectly. Everybody looks like they're from the same universe, even if they are from different generations.
Yeah, this is some of the brilliance of Star Wars. So the fact that Fraser brings this up is cool, and Fraser's a cool guy on Twitter as well, so be sure to follow him. But the interesting thing about what we've seen from Comic-Con, which we talked about earlier in our show, was just this chemistry that these three have, and the fact that it's been so long since they were together on screen, but just seeing them do public appearances together, it doesn't happen a heck of a lot. So it's pretty remarkable. This has all the makings of something that's going to be a magical cinematic experience.
Chewie, get us out of here!
If you would like to respond to our question of the show, have a comment, or just want to say hello, send us an email or MP3 to feedback@coffeewithkenobi.com. Or if you have a specific question or comment for any of us individually, you can email us at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com, CoryC@coffeewithkenobi.com, or JeffM@coffeewithkenobi.com, or visit us at coffeewithkenobi.com and click on the Contact Us section, or comment on one of the stories featured on the site. If you enjoy the show, please write a review in iTunes or Stitcher. You can also like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, as well as keep up to date at our Twitter feed at Coffee with Kenobi. There's no I in with. You can also find us on Tumblr at coffeewithkenobi.tumblr.com. If you enjoy the jazz music, the album is Eye to Eye by Steve Turok on iTunes.
Give the evacuation code signal.
That's it for show number 40 of Coffee with Kenobi. A huge thank you to Dr. Andrea Letamendi for coming on and discussing the psychology of collecting. Be sure to check out the Arkham Sessions for the best analysis of Batman the Animated Series. Thank you again to Mediocre Jedi, Mike Audette, Neil Lowry, Dennis Keithley, Matt Moore, Lillian Torres, and Eric Scrotch for their contributions to our Coffee with Kenobi Patreon page. We really appreciate it, and we'll announce the winners of the first coffee chat on our next show. If you want to support Coffee with Kenobi's Patreon page, check us out through our website or through the show notes.
Thanks also to Rob at the Bearded Trio, media specialist Lisa Dullard, our Coffee with Kenobi bloggers, to everyone who contributed to this show, and to all of you out there who listen to and email Coffee with Kenobi. Don't forget to send us your comments and opinions on the topic for show number 41, the current state of Star Wars canon.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.